Well, hi everyone, and welcome back. A week away, and it is Thursday, the 13th of March. Look, March is nearly halfway through. These months, they fly by, don't they? And of course, well, we'll talk about the time. We'll talk about the time in a few minutes' time. That's what we'll do. This is Paul English Live. We're on WBN 3 to 4 with you for the next 2 hours. Welcome to the show. Been all fun and games in the political sphere over here on this side of the pond this week. Lots of typical political pantomime. What fun. Well, hi everyone and welcome back. Hope you've had a good little week. Those of you who have got used to me snotting up and coughing over the last 2 weeks, I'm sorry to be so vulgar so early on in the show. I'm not really. I think I've cleared most of it. There may be one or two opportunistic coughs, hacks and wheezes throughout the next few hours, but generally my nasal passages are gloriously clean, and I just thought you all ought to know. I'm sure you're all very, very happy about that, although not as happy as me. And my wonderful abscess, I like to go into all these things, don't I? So I had an abscess at the same time. You can't beat antibiotics, that's what I say, and I just love them. Apparently they're supposed to destroy all your gut fauna, but I would prefer that to having raging toothache, which is what I had. And since then I've gone on a little regime of salt water mouth gargling, which is quite interesting. So I'm doing that morning and night, followed by coconut oil teeth pulling. Actually, I don't quite do that. I haven't been using toothpaste for years. Yes, filthy creature that I am. But that's using coconut oil instead, and I would heartily recommend it. It's very, very good. Somebody sent me a good video the other week saying that this combination of gargling a bit with salt water in the mouth, spit it out. You don't swallow it, of course. It's rather there. And then follow that up with coconut oil, produces a sort of thing in the mouth that absolutely annihilates all the evil bacteria that do your teeth harm. And I've maintained for a long time that without plumbers and dentists, this show wouldn't be taking place, because it'd be smelly everywhere and we'd all have toothache. Civilization wouldn't have got built. And generally speaking, things would be so bad we wouldn't be bothered about anything much because of all the discomfort caused by that. So that's kind of my stance. I went to my dentist's. When did I go? About a week ago, when I actually just cadged them, and I went in to really cadge the antibiotics out of them, and managed to, of course, do that. Only to discover, because I'd not been in for about 5 years, that the entire medical crew had completely changed. And it was full of people that, how can I put this tactfully, I didn't recognise. Anyway, they were all quite pleasant. I'm supposed to go back and they're going to look at my teeth again. But now that I'm feeling good, I'm probably not going to go. I'm kind of leery about getting involved with things like the NHS and dentists and all sorts of other things. I didn't used to be like this when I was younger. I was completely trusting. Maybe you were similar. Maybe you followed a similar sort of path of getting more and more, well, suspicious. And there's something slightly gone wonky with all of that kind of stuff. And certain bits of news that have been coming out over here over the past few days have kind of backed that up. All sorts of strange communications from Keir personality bypass Starmer talking about shutting down NHS England and all sorts of other things, which I can't be bothered to actually wade into. It's just more sort of guff and drama in this space. But I guess we've had a lot of it since he rolled up. We've had a lot of it actually since before he rolled up into that position, and it doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. So don't hold your breath on that one for a little while. Anyway, welcome to the crew. The crew are here this evening. The gang's all here. Paul, are you going to be joining us for the show, or are you still removing ice from your gutters? What's going on? Oh, hang on just a minute. I've done my usual thing of asking you a question and then muting you so that you're not going out to the audience. So let me unmute you. There we go. Just unmuted the studio. There we go. Hi, Paul. How are you doing?
There we go. I'm doing good. Actually, gravity is taking care of the ice dams. The dams are actually landing on my stuff.
Yeah.
I have 2 propane tanks that are frozen to the ground that are in peril, and a completely flattened patio set from the last ice dam that fell off the roof and landed on it. So the dams are letting go. Yeah. And landing on my stuff.
Well, that's good. Is it still cold with you guys out there, or is it still cold with you?
No, it's actually warm enough that it's literally running off the roof as the ice melts.
Really?
So
that's nice. That's nice. That's really good.
I just wish it wouldn't have flattened my wrought iron patio set. Give me a break.
Oh yeah, patio sets. Oh boy, I've just got some. I've just taken receipt of my improved chainsaw. My chainsaw went a bit wonky, so I've just repaired that, and then I've got some chainsaw oil which I need, and now that I'm over my cold, this is all very exciting for you out there. You all want to know about my trees. I've got too many trees, so I have. I guess for England, I've got a relatively large garden. It's about 50 foot by 40 foot, so it is pretty big. But you can't tell because there are all these trees everywhere, and I've not done anything on it for the last few years simply because my time's been taken up with other matters. And but the chainsaw's now ready to go. I've borrowed a ladder from the neighbour. I'm about to start going in. We're going to have a go at the cherry tree first, which was planted in 1922. How about that? It's a massive thing, way too big, and so that needs a bit of trimming. And we've got then we've got all the Leylandis to have a go at. So it's going to be tree hacking with my chainsaw coming up. I'm quite looking forward to it, actually. The weather's not turned bad. Yeah?
The cherry tree, is that still producing?
No. It goes into blossom. Cherry blossom pink, apple blossom white. You remember that song? I'll dig it up, actually, now that I've mentioned it. Beautiful song. Love that. And yeah, no, it still produces a blossom. We also had an apple tree when we got here. So these houses were built, I think, in 1922. I remember someone telling me. So that makes them 103 years old now. And they were council houses built at the time, but they're built like a tank. They're really well built. And so we're in a sneaky little place, very quiet. And everybody likes my garden, even though they all admit that the trees are way too big. That's because we've got 3 cordylines, so these things look like palm trees, and they sort of manage to sort of get their way through an English winter quite easily because it's quite mild, really, and they do look rather beautiful and all that. So, yeah, cherry tree, because they were built on an orchard. This was an orchard, so every house that started off with an apple tree and a cherry tree in every single garden of these 8 houses, and ours is the only one that's got one left. So at least we've done our bit for keeping this tree going. And it's such a mighty old thing. When cherry trees start to split down the main sort of section of the trunk and all this kind of stuff, and then they get all that gunky sap coming out, which I quite like. And the birds like it too. So always nice to start off with a bit of a nature report on my garden. Isn't it thrilling? All that kind of stuff. It's fantastic. So, it's good. Well, I like it. And everybody might be able to relate to cherry trees and apple trees. I don't really know. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. Anyway, good to have you on board, Paul. Let's hop back to this side of the pond because I see that Eric is with us. Eric, good evening. How are you?
Greetings.
Greetings. How are you?
I mustn't grumble, and I'm pleased
can.
to hear that you're sounding a lot better because with all that nasal sound, people were thinking you were a bogeyman, weren't they?
Well, I think I was a bogeyman,
just a
actually.
thought.
It's
Yes.
why I
I
couldn't
know
join
that's
you
not
really
very nice.
over Sunday and Monday. I was just feeling still quite a bit grotty. And yeah, and these things, they just last too long. I don't want any more.
They
Although
don't.
my son said he'd try and give me another one because he thought I ought to go for a world record. So, you know, 2.5 weeks this bloody thing's lasted. Over 2 weeks. Incredible, really. They normally last about 6 days, don't they? 3 days coming, 3 days going.
That's
Something
right.
like that. So
You're lacking possibly a B vitamin or something like that.
is that
Try-
B for beer? Is that
B for beer. Yes, you could have beer, but you could try something like Udo's oil or something like that. That's pretty good. It's one of these oils that you got to have with a banana or something, because I have trouble keeping it down. It's got this twang to it. But no, something like that. Miles will be able to sort you out with that.
Will he?
It's definitely a vitamin. Yeah, you got a vitamin deficiency somewhere that's letting this in. So
I might
that's
well
probably what
have
it is.
actually. I think it's stress as well. Although, of course, I'm very
Yes.
relaxed here in the show. You ought to see it before we start. But yeah, I think it could be that kind of stuff. I'll tell you what I
think
have.
that stress. Yeah.
No, go
So I
on.
was going to say stress related.
Yeah,
Try St John's Wort. It's very,
you mentioned
very
that to
good.
me the other day. Yeah, I ought to
Yeah.
go and have a look, shouldn't I? Actually, I've got it
You'll
up on a
calm down
page.
because when I was in the situation similar to yourself, I was catching everything hello.
That's my phone. Somebody actually thinks I'm important. That's ridiculous. It was on the
I thought
desk.
you'd been
and
eating too many.
No, I had to
cabbages or
reset my
something,
phone,
you
and
know.
now the vibrators come on. Not steady, everyone.
Whoa!
Yes. all that kind of stuff.
You said the word vibrate. Sorry.
Well, I've left it there. It's to add atmosphere to the broadcast.
yes, the only show with a vibrator on it.
That's right. That's it. It's our new USP for the show. So you get these strange
Yes.
vibration sounds. Yeah, sorry about that, everybody, but there we
But
go.
what I was going to say is,
Speaking of which, I have a question.
Yeah?
Speaking of which, I have a question. Did either of you hear about the old spinster that completely destroyed the batteries on her cell phone and vibrating pager all in the same day?
This is a family show. What have I done to deserve this? It's outrageous. We're only 13 minutes in. You know.
she didn't know whether she's coming or going.
You were
did
the one
she,
who
poor
started
woman?
talking about vibrators.
I'm gonna have to have a word with the editorial foreman for this show. It's getting quite unruly. I mean, it's just outrageous. Yeah. Yeah, St. John's Wort. Well, I'll have a look into that. I'll tell you what I've eaten the last couple of days, though. Today was a whole lemon. I've just eaten whole lemons, so I don't eat the skin. Although I used to have a friend that used to eat the skin, used to eat the whole thing, right? So I peeled the lemon, and normally I'd stick it in a juicer or something, but I thought, but I'm letting all the fleshy lemony bits go to waste, right? So I get the pips out. By gum, I tell you, it fair takes your breath away when you put half a lemon in your mouth. It's quite a thing. I thought, am I going to pass out? It's. Do you know why I do it? I'll tell you. Someone that suggested it's the best thing you can do. Your liver loves it. First thing in the morning.
It does. But
your liver
what I
loves it.
have is lukewarm water with the juice of a lemon in it, and with the pips, I don't throw them away. I chew them. Now, people say they've got cyanide in. Yes, they have got cyanide in, but it's very, very minimal, and that does you a world of good. I actually chew the pips.
Do you?
So, yes.
Gosh, they're really bitter though, aren't they? Well, the cyanide is good. That occurs in those Hunza apricot seeds, apricot kernels.
That's it.
And
B17.
That's right. And they're prescribed for getting cancers into check. They're cyanide attacks cancer, but obviously it'll attack your whole system if you take too much of it. But I think the minimal amounts in the seeds are okay for you. That's obviously what you've discovered with the lemons.
But no, the thing is, sorry, I didn't mean to talk that. Terribly sorry. I'm most rude of me. But what I was going to say is, but I'm rude like that, you know. That so was it? Stop talking when I'm interrupting. But what I was going to say is that you with lemon, you see, most of our food is acidic, and colds and stuff like that feed on acidity, on that acid. Mm-hmm. So you want to change your system to alkaline. And lemon, believe it or not, is alkaline. That's why you have lemon and honey and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I drink, you've got to rehydrate in the morning, and I use this zero water filter. I want to get money from these people for giving them a free plug, but no, just a grain or two of Celtic salt, and then some lemon in it, but not freezing cold, lukewarm, so a little bit of water out the kettle,
Yep.
and that should see off any nasty vitamins in that. But as for vitamin C, you can't beat, for getting your stomach in order, sauerkraut, and you can make it yourself. Don't buy it, because it's such an easy thing to do. Sauerkraut, it's the simplest thing in the world. Just cabbage, 2 ingredients: cabbage and Celtic salt. That's all you need. And it
Can you
takes 3
do?
weeks
Is it
to make
possible to do cookery shows on the radio?
Yeah, why not? Yes.
Cooking with
do you remember
Eric.
Fanny Craddock, or Cooking with
do.
Fanny? You never Fanny Craddock?
Stop
Yes, you too can have donuts. I better not say that one.
that. No. What was the name of the guy that was with her
Finish
all the
the
time?
recipe.
It was always bumbling around. Was that her husband? He was great, wasn't he? He had a
Yeah.
monocle as well, didn't he? He did have a monocle. I've forgotten his name.
She deserted him when he was ill, didn't she? Nice
Yeah.
person. Yeah,
She did.
What was
Please,
his name?
Yeah, Paul.
Eric,
I'll look
please
it up.
Finish the recipe. How long does it take to make it? And it's cabbage, Celtic salt, and how long does it take? And what do you put it in?
Well, no,
Have
what
to
you
use like
do.
a crock, or you can
Right.
use any container.
I use a large glass container, but what you do, you massage the cabbage. You obviously slice it up, or you got it's to your own personal taste. And what you do, you weigh the cabbage before you start, and then you put 2% salt in. So you get the weight, and it's times 2% salt. No more, no less, because if you go over that 2%, then it's too salty. Then you massage the cabbage after it's been sliced up to make it, and it becomes, moisture comes out of it, and it becomes all mushy and sloshy. And you know when you've got there, it takes about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, something like that. Then you pour it all into a container. It could be glass container. I prefer glass. And the most important thing is before you start, reserve some of the outside leaves and cut the stalk off. And you make sure that all the sliced cabbage is under the liquid. That's very important, because anything that's above the liquid could get bacteria on it. And then you just put the old cabbage leaves over the top, okay, and put a weight on there. It could be any sort of weight, or you could leave it, but you've got to make sure, as I say, that everything is under the liquid. You just put the lid on the top, but don't screw it down, because it ferments, and you don't want the glass exploding because of the fermentation. And then you leave it in a very warm place, 70 degrees, 65 to 70 degrees, and you leave it for, some people say 2 weeks, some people say 3 weeks. I leave mine 2. It's just my taste. And then you seal it. It's when the fermentation stops, basically. Then you screw the lid on, put it in the fridge, and that'll last for a year, 7 months to a year. And if it's not to your taste, you leave it a bit more, because it's like wine. The longer you leave it, the better it is. But our ancestors didn't have stomach problems as much as we do, because it's got the good bacteria in there. And what you may find is when you first eat sauerkraut, you'll get flatulence. And the reason why is it's killing off
What's
the bad
that?
bacteria. That sort of stuff,
Oh, right.
And so we go to Eric's Cookery. And therefore, next week, we'll be going on to exploding puddings. And
I have
how
a
to burn
sneaking
things
suspicion,
successfully.
Eric, that many of your recipes are going to have the word, one of the byproducts is going to be flatulence in all of them somehow. So,
Well, it's funny you should say that.
is it? Maybe it's that special Fockham Hall flatulence that comes from out of that space. So, cool.
Yes.
Oh, no, well, that's good.
But-
Hey,
No,
I'll tell you,
no, seriously,
someone's not
when he
spoken
said
yet.
Massage.
So, I just want to bring someone to the mic. So,
I meant it
Patrick,
elsewhere when he said massage the cabbage.
who's massaging cabbage?
Oh, yes. It's very therapeutic, I'd say, when you do that.
It
But
is.
It's a bloody messy job. Get cabbage everywhere.
Yeah.
And but as I say, apparently it's rich with vitamin C and K2. And K2 is what fights off the nasty nasty illnesses. So there we go.
Well, I feel better for the lemons for the last couple of days. I think they've definitely made a difference, actually. I really do. So loads of other things to do. I've got to get some MMS, Jim Humble stuff. That in fact, there was a show on today. Someone was talking about it on George Hobbs's show, actually. We're talking about that. But, Patrick, how are things in Wisconsin? How are you? And have you just made you've had enough time there to probably make some sauerkraut. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Cool.
Yeah, it's nice here. Got the window open. It's that nice. It's 14 degrees C, just 57 Fahrenheit.
Ooh.
Quite good. What you need, though, Paul, you need a safety pin, a pint of rum, and an old sock.
Oh, yeah. The old sock. Yeah, socks. They're a worry as you get older. They never match, do they? They never match up, the socks. We've all got too many white socks in the house. They're never matching up. One's got this insignia on it and another one. It's always a bit of a worry. Anyway, welcome everybody to the show.
Baby.
Look, it only took us 20 minutes to get through all the sauerkraut and the lemons and all that kind of stuff. It was pretty good. And a shout out to everybody in Rumble. So if you're just tuning in for the first time, probably not. But if you are and you want to know where all the communication action is, it's over on the Rumble feed. So if you want to head on over to Rumble, that's the most active place. We've got a lot of people there typing away and making their contributions in this thing. And Sally says, with regards to our lemon conversation, she peels the lemon close to the skin, not too much pith. Well, there's always a bit of pith taking round here, Aunt Sally, as you would well know. And then I slice up the peel and put it in some coconut cake that I make. It's lovely. I have the rest of the lemon throughout the day in cups of tea. I have a good old auntie friend, well, a relation on the other side of the family who does that all the time.
It feels good for you.
Yeah, I know.
You got to eat the whole thing.
Oh, I know. Now, what's the peel called? That's the zest, isn't it? When you the zest of a lemon is the yellow stuff. And didn't Bill Gates try to patent the lemon? He did, you know. He tried to get hold of it because if you freeze lemons and start grating off that zest, it's known to be massively powerful at subduing cancers. A bit like what you were talking about with the pips, Eric. I don't know whether there's cyanide in the zest, but there's certainly something in it. So lemons...
Well, B17.
Yeah.
I think it's B17. But I'll tell you something. Do you know how to preserve lemons that will last in your refrigerator for about 2 months? You just put them in a jar of water, seal the top, and put them in the refrigerator. And because otherwise they'll start going off after about a week. You can preserve them for about 2 months in water.
Right. Cool.
And that's what I do. I just put them in the jam. I keep, you know, those those jars of coconut oil.
Yes.
They're perfect for putting lemons in. And you can put one lemon in each jar. But I've noticed that my local Lidl, 2 of them, I can't seem to get that coconut oil in two Lidls where I go.
Really?
So I don't know whether they stop. Yeah. I don't know whether they just run out of stock, but I'm going to stock up again. I've got a big stock of it because for $1.99, which is about what?
That's where I buy it too.
Like that.
Yeah, I used to get it at Aldi. Look at us advertising supermarket chains that are poisoning us, but they've got some good stuff. You're right. It was only £2 a tin. Or a jar, and it's like £5 elsewhere. It was absolutely ridiculous. The last time I went to Aldi, I bought 48 jars. We're down to the last 8, so I'm due to sort of stock up. I buy them in bulk when I see them like that. Yeah, really, really good stuff. Anybody that's, by the way, as a slight aside, anybody that's seen the image for today, which is absolutely marvellous. I don't know where I found it, but I absolutely love it. The 5 gentlemen in the middle, one's not us, but the other 4 are us. So you've got to guess which ones we are. Okay, this is, of course, complete nonsense and piffle, but it makes the show more interesting. And it's got a Russian theme to it, and I just want to sort of move over to that a little bit and away from the lemons for a while, although we can always come back and talk about lemons and even vegetables later on. Who knows where the conversation is going to take us. But the title, or the little sort of, this is not the whole show, but it's called The Woke Intelligence. And that kind of doesn't make any sense, does it? Unless you know what the intelligence were. And the reason why this taps into wokeism and all this kind of psychological and sociological engineering and mental decay in the political class, which they always had, but which seems to be really, really obvious. And I came across an article on a website called europeanconservative.com, which is pretty good, actually. If you look at the rest of the articles, europeanconservative.com. This was published on January the 9th, 2025, so just a couple of months back, by Rod Dreher. Dreher is spelled Dreher, and I'm going to read through practically the whole of it because there's a really interesting insight, and it just sort of builds up well. The little sort of subhead says, and you'll understand where we're going with this, the rape gang scandal makes it abundantly clear that liberalism, as it has been practiced for decades in the West, is the suicide note of a civilization. And I think we've touched upon this regularly, that it absolutely is. I think we would categorize it as a mental illness, which it is. And this article kind of goes in and touches upon it from an aspect I'd not seen before. So I'll just run through it. And if you want to just butt in at any point, guys, just butt in. It's absolutely fine. Because the first bit's a little bit anecdotal. I don't know how long it'll take to go through, but we'll probably finish out this hour looking at this. So he writes, he says, I've just come back from 3 days on Mount Athos, the Orthodox Christian monastic enclave, on an isolated peninsula in northeastern Greece. And to enter Athos and its archaic monastic culture is to leave time, at least for a few days. To come back down the mountain and go back to the world is to return to history. And these days, history is moving vividly and fast for Europe towards some sort of cataclysmic reckoning. What more can be said about the Islamic rape gang scandal in the United Kingdom? Not enough. Not enough until something massive and substantial happens to right what has gone very, very wrong in that country, which has been cursed by its ruling class in government, academia, media and other institutions. Do you feel cursed by our ruling class, Eric? What do you think? Do you feel cursed by it?
Yes, and I think it goes back before World War One, because what did the Germans say? Lions led by donkeys, and this is what we've had all the way along. Lions led by donkeys.
Yeah. I think we've got a very mature sort of political system of decay over here. It's very old, and all the sort of wiles and all the little skills needed to retain power and to ensure that others don't get anywhere near it have been learnt a long time ago and are applied almost unconsciously, I think, all over the place. It's why there's this sort of, well, it's not a sort of, literally there is an asphyxiation in public discourse. There isn't any, really, of any substance whatsoever. And of course, we've now got the ultimate non-communicating chump in Keir Starmer, a man who's, blah, 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 blah. Well, anyway.
I'll tell you a look at life. Sorry to butt in.
No, go on.
What I was going to say is that
I have
an exciting life. I often walk down to the out-of-town supermarket, which is about 40 minutes walk, but it's good exercise. I'm like you, Paul. I like to. It's easy to get in the car and go drive somewhere, and it's too cold to cycle, so I walk. And on my journey, there's a doctor's surgery one side of a road, and there's a chemist shop the other side of the road. And it looks like, you know, when they used to have the booting out time at pubs where, the doors would open and everybody would leave at the same time. Well, I was down there the other day and I was seeing all these very obese people, ill-looking people, leaving the doctor's surgery, going over to the chemist shop, and then coming out their little doggy bags of toxins.
Right.
And that is a sad situation we're in, because the amount of people that are on antidepressants, that are on special drugs, this, that and the other, can you imagine if that supply stopped? It'd be like a zombie apocalypse, wouldn't it? Think about it. It really would. Mm-hmm. And why is it that years ago, say 50 plus years ago, people have been, well, longer than that, 80 odd years ago, people have been through a Second World War, but there was very few people on drugs and things like that. And when I was talking about drugs, I'm talking about big pharma drugs. But now, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a phenomenal percentage of people on big pharma toxins. But again, they're being suppressed, these people. And the amount of strange, shall we say, all right, I'll be very blunt, loonies that are around. There is a lot of very mad people. And I would dread to think if that supply of pharmaceutical toxins stopped, we we would have a zombie apocalypse. I just wonder what anybody else thinks about that.
I think it's kind of probably a symptom of this long-term reduction in the freedom of speech. It's a reduction in other freedoms. But when you can't really live your culture freely without being criticised and without the force of law now being applied to you, that's what they've done. You know, they say, well, you can't insult people. Well, you can't do this. You can't do that. Actually, if you do that, you're going to get charged. If you do it online, you're going to really get charged. It's been the slow drip, drip, drip and the closing of all the freedoms. And what it does is it produces I know it's a cliche, but it does produce a demoralized, de-energized people. Because people are unsure about where they stand in communication and what they can do. And of course, we touch on this regularly, but we need to, because this force is always being brought against people. So once you've restricted freedom of speech and freedom of inquiry, which goes with it, you begin to produce a deadened people. The people become dead, slowly but surely.
Oh, spot on.
You know, and
spot on.
And that's kind of what we're facing all the time. I still see outbreaks of cheery Britishness all over the place, usually from me, actually.
Oh, yeah.
As I go, hello, all that kind of stuff, really laying it on
have
thick.
you seen,
you know?
Do you remember Harry Enfield? Was it with the slobs? Now, the people coming out of the quacks, I don't call them doctors, the quacks, the majority are obese. Most have got tracksuits on. They look as if they're just dressed in rags. They look like slaves, basically. They're just hobbling over the road to the chemist, and then they get in their 4x4 car to go down to the takeaway and fill their gob up with takeaway rubbish. So, you know, it's a kind of it's a circle, and I think it's probably similar in America. That's what's happening. It's frightening. It really is. But how many people do you see that are well dressed? Very few. Most look like tramps.
Yeah.
Slovenly. Dirty, smelly, you know. So open to the audience.
Yeah, Paul.
Tailored clothing. Tailored clothing is, you know, it's long since gone, long since passed. And I think it's important to really, really highlight what Eric said a moment ago. The antidepressants and the rampant move. I mean, every time you deal with any kind of a government office or like a medical office or healthcare professional, whatever, they give you a questionnaire of like 20 questions that, do you often feel useless or helpless, you know, and you have your 5 options, you know, never, sometimes, oftentimes, most of the time, and all that stuff. They are pushing the antidepressants and the antipsychotic meds because they know that all they have to do is flip the switch, shut them off, and a lion's share of the population is going to go absolutely off the rails. That is planned. Don't fall for it. Don't let them push you into that corner. And if you are on that stuff, pull yourself, just kind of wean yourself off of it. This program is not intended to treat, diagnose, prevent, or cure any disease and should not be considered medical advice. As always, consult your own local health professional before acting on any information presented here. But for God's sake, try and wean yourself off of that stuff, because if your supply dries up, then where are you going to be?
Well, people need that. Every single one of us, and this is an example, a case in point, need a peer group. You need to be plugged into a group. You have to find a group. It doesn't even have to be big. It just has to be more than 2 of you. And it's required. I think it's absolutely vital. If you think about your happy days at school, and mine were, frankly, apart from a few canings, which I didn't deserve, of course, and still intend to prosecute the headmaster, even though he's been dead 45 years. But you cluster together, and it's a buoyant, exuberant sort of time. And then after that, you go to the pub with your mates. So when you're young and just connecting up with people all the time, there is a real sort of, you wouldn't call it this because it's just normal living, but there's an exhilaration. There's always something that's coming up. There's the moaning about the fact that you've run out of money before the end of the month when you just started working, all these sorts of things. But there's a kind of dynamism to it. What's occurred in great part, is this kind of subduing of life And there are many, many sort of influences, I think, that have brought that about. We touch upon them here all the time because we're really looking to sort of look at the culture, which is a reflection of these decisions that have been taken, I think, further on up the decision-making tree, all by, the master social engineers who literally want a compliant cow-like people, which is completely against our instincts and, reduces the quality of our life. I don't think, everything is about the promotion of fear. I know I'm only stating the bloody obvious here, but it is, the news cycle is just one big fear and anxiety-inducing roll of items. I know that good news doesn't work, but that's possibly because we're trained on nothing but bad news. But there are so many good stories that could be communicated on these major platforms, but we know they never will. They're not going to be, because these people are very anxious about what might happen should we wake up. So I take your point, Eric, but I guess that they're much more interested in a zombie apocalypse than they are in terms of a kind of willfully spirited thinking people. Everything that, you look at has been to reduce that. This article, by the way, let me just read a little bit more of it here. I'm going to go through the whole thing because it'll just ignite.
I think Patrick is trying to get out of the back room.
He's trying to get out.
In, if you can.
All right, hang on. What did he have to leave?
Well, he came back in, and he had to leave and come back in. I think he's in the.
All right, okay. Room. Welcome back, Patrick. Do you have a nice time there out in the? Have you just had a good time? Had fun?
In time out, yeah, it was all right.
Yeah,
it was good.
Cool.
I just wanted to make the comment that today I was at a place where everybody was well dressed. It was a funeral.
Right.
And it's like they wait until a funeral happens in order to dress nice, but why not dress nice every day?
Oh, you could just attend a lot of funerals, I suppose.
That too. You could have a funeral every day, I guess.
Yeah, my son's talking to me about buying a suit. He's got to go to a wedding, which is quite nice, right? So one of his friends is getting wed, and he keeps on saying, I've got to buy a suit. I keep on trying to dissuade him from buying a suit. It's not I'm against suits. I say, what you need... I said, how often are you invited to places where you're going to wear a suit? I said, it won't be that often. It's very formal. Get a nice jacket and trousers, right? Then you can mix and match. Of course, he doesn't really understand. He's got his heart set on a suit. We were watching a little video the other day of a documentary about Al Capone. And there was all this footage of Chicago and New York in the 1920s. And we were basically, what we were both commenting on was the quality of the trousers. The men's trousers were outstanding. Lots of rummage for your scrummage. Proper. They just looked great. Everything just looked good. Everything just looks great. And, of course, that kind of clothing has been removed from the world, or is certainly so very expensive that most young men can't buy it. And there aren't any places to go and wear a suit, really. I mean, if everybody's going to work at home, and I can see that, where do you go? I mean, of course, for this broadcast, I'm wearing a three-piece suit. As I always do, with a spinning bow tie, because, and because it's radio, you can't prove me wrong. This is why I don't have a webcam, okay? So it's all part of it. But there's not too many opportunities to get dressed up. And I'm thinking that's a sad thing. That is really, really sad. It's why we have to do things. I know we're talking about things, but we have to do things like organise these country dances, which sound so quaint and wacky, don't they? And I'm kind of having a little shiver of embarrassment even thinking about it. But these social scenes that used to be just all over the place, they've all gone. They've been replaced with a kind of more egotistical, individualistic sort of entertainment space. And it doesn't help. I don't think it helps at all, So you've got to give people an opportunity to get dressed up. When I used to work at this place in the 80s, they used to have the annual Christmas bash was at the Dorchester on Park Lane, okay? And the first year I went, I felt like, a fish out of water. Had to go and hire a dinner jacket because I didn't have one. Went to Moss Bros. Remember, do Moss Bros still exist? The hiring of suits? Do they?
I remember Moss Bros.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something, if you want to buy a suit, if someone wants to get a suit, go down to the local charity shop, but go to a posh area, you get better quality there, and you probably pick up a suit for 20 quid or 10 quid.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I sometimes wear a suit when I just go out, just, if I go shopping or anything like that, because it's surprising. People treat you differently when you wear a suit. It sounds weird. It's not a snob thing, but you
treat yourself differently as well, Eric. Don't you? I mean, as a bloke, I don't get... The last time I actually turned out smart was just for this Christmas bash when we went up to this pub and there were about 40 people there. It was fantastic. It was just good. I don't expect to do it every night. It's not as if my life depends on it, but the fact that everybody just makes an effort to turn up and be sort of well turned out, it's good. It gives you a buzz. You go, oh, look, we can all get dressed properly. I know it seems idiotic because, yeah.
3-piece. I mean, I often wear a 3-piece with a pocket watch. And but the thing is, I don't tend to have a tie. I prefer to have a cravat. I think that's much better because it's more relaxed. But really,
also it would offset your cigarette holder with your Fockham Hall filters, wouldn't it?
That's right. That's right. Oh, and also the Fockham Hall Wonder Pencil. I'd have to show the Wonder Pencil in the top pocket. Yes, people have known that the Fockham Hall Wonder Pencil, 1,001 uses.
There goes my brain again.
Mrs. Smith wrote in and said it's very good for her married life. It's a marital aid. Don't know how, but I just know.
You do realise it's the middle of the afternoon in America right now for talking about such things. Sorry, American listeners on WBN. Sorry for all this. This is all very rather British at the moment. We're in the evening, so we're all getting a bit sort of leery. It happens. You can't help it, you see. So this is what kind of. Oh, and by the way, I haven't mentioned to everybody in the States, of course, because you did your clocks at the weekend. We're out of whack. We're out of sync. So this show started today at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, not 3 p.m. And it's going to be starting at 4 p.m. ridiculously for another 3 weeks, I think, because our clocks catch you up on the 29th of March, the last Saturday of this month. So we've got the 13th today, the 20th and the 27th. So the next two shows are also going to start at 4 o'clock US time. Then we all come back together and we're all coordinated again. And it's just, what a bloody mess. 3 weeks have just been out of kilter. It's mad. I don't know. I don't know why major corporations are not whinging about it. We whinge about it, but it's just mad. I mean, what do they do with all their timetables and everything? And I'm assuming they have timetables or scheduling and this, that, and the other. It's mad. You know, they shouldn't change at all, but if they are, they should at least all change at the same time. Anyway, here endeth the whinge about the Northern Hemisphere's buggered up time schedules. But back to the story. Now, where had I left off? Let's just zoom back in on this because we'll propel us through another little chunk of the show, which is good. He said, I'll read the last sentence, the last bit. He says, what more can be said about the Islamic rape gang scandal in the UK? Not enough. Not enough until something massive and substantial happens to right what has gone very, very wrong in the country, which has been cursed by its ruling class in government, academia, media and other institutions. This has been a gradual cursing. On Wednesday, he writes, at Prime Minister's Question Time, so this is sometime back in early January this year, Tory leader Kemi Badenoch, or Bad Enoch, made a complete fool of Keir Starmer. Can't be too difficult to do, who could only twist and turn as he tried to avoid accountability for the atrocities. But it is also true that Badenoch's party, the Conservatives, which held power from 2011, when reporting in the Times of London first revealed the phenomenon, and there would be many more revelations to come, until last autumn's Labour victory did nothing substantial to address the problem. This is true. This is a crisis that consumes the entire British establishment, even King Charles, who disgraced himself with a Christmas address in which he burbled the usual platitudes about diversity being our strength. Complete piffle and nonsense. And they say that all the time. But of course, I tend to interpret that when these people are saying this, and Blair used to sort of, like on autopilot, say it all the time. What he means is that diversity is the strength of the ruling class, because it makes them strong at our expense by effectively dividing to conquer. That kind of thing is what it does. And he goes on here. It says the ongoing scandal in Britain stands for the crisis throughout Western liberal democracies, in which leaders and institutions in the grip of ideology failed both by commission and omission to deal forthrightly with the problem in front of them, and usually made them worse. So I think that there's a similar pattern in the States, isn't there? It's not as demonstrably dramatic as we've had with the Islamic rape gangs here, but there's similar pressures building up in terms of the diversity is our strength nonsense, although apparently Mr. Trump is supposedly going to do something to address that, but we will see. Yeah, we will see.
It's divide and rule, though. That's what they've done all the time. This is how Britain ran the empire, divide and rule. And I was talking to an Indian chap once, and he said that they've never had the draft or conscription in India because they didn't need to, because there's enough manpower there. It's a bit like China. But he said what they would do, if they needed more manpower from a certain province, they'd create starvation in that province. And the recruiting offices would have no problem at all. Be big queues outside. And he said that's what they did all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I think that what they do is more psychological. People here, for children, young people leaving school, getting to work is very, very difficult now. And getting work that they like and like doing, that's even more difficult. So where do they go? Army recruit or to go into the forces. And I think that's what they do. They just make life tough for people, so they go into the forces.
Well, they do. I mean, it's not a lot of things could be organised. It's not as if there's not a lot of useful work to be done, but there's no impetus to get it done. There's loads and loads of things that could be done.
We need optimism, loads of optimism. I mean, in World War II, did you know that the British Army recruiting offices, I was told this, were actually, there was a lot in Southern Ireland because there was mass poverty in Southern Ireland.
Yeah.
And they got a lot of Southern Irish, well, they signed up for both sides, didn't they? But because they were neutral. But that's the trouble. This ideological subversion is causing mass pessimism all the time. Look at the 60s. Look how optimistic it was. In the 70s, it was optimistic. And then it suddenly starts getting pessimistic all the way along.
Well, yeah, I suppose people would blame Thatcher for that and say it became the me decade, which it did. But I wouldn't directly point the finger at Thatcher. I don't think any one person with these things is... Of course, they have figureheads out there for us to kick about, and we should kick Keir Starmer about a bit because he's absolutely beyond belief. And I don't really want to keep droning on about him, but he is. He's just obviously been picked. We've got a new low tide watermark in political communication skills and everything else. He's just a hideous human being at the moment. Who knows? He might have some redeeming qualities. But you're right. I mean, all of this thing has just been unfolding steadily since 1945, and even before that. Really, you know, the fix was in the late 1800s, and then they rolled out wars, and so on and so on and so on. Let's carry on with this little thing, though, because I want to. I haven't really got even to the meat of the article, but I just like running through it. It goes on. He says the Catholic Church got there first. From the moment the extent of its cover-up of child sexual abuse by priests began to be uncovered in 2002, starting with the situation in Boston. The behaviour of the Catholic hierarchy has been lamentable overall. Yes, there have been some needed reforms and enough apologies to take up a shelf in the Vatican Library. And yet, Pope Francis continues to indulge and protect alleged sex abusers favoured by himself. Last week, he appointed the arch-liberal Cardinal Robert McElroy of San Diego to the Archbishopric of Washington, even though McElroy unquestionably turned a blind eye to the sexual depredations of his mentor, the disgraced former Cardinal Theodore McCarrick. And we've had the same thing going on over here with the Church of England, haven't we? That's why, what's his name? The arse that was in charge of it had to resign because he'd been covering up for some kiddie fiddling priest for donkey's years. They all knew about it. So it's another aspect of it, you know, that aspect there within these hierarchical structures and so on and so forth. Let me read the next paragraph. Jump all over me if you get the urge. But I'm still coming up to the meat of it because it's to do with the Russians that I want to get to. But I just thought the preamble's worth it. Meanwhile, he writes, the moral authority of the Catholic Church having crashed, the Church continues to hemorrhage members, and yet the Pope and the hierarchy carry on as if nothing could touch them. With Europe threatened by Islamic violence, both of the terroristic kind and of the sort carried out by Muslim rape gangs, Francis persists in lauding Islam and condemning Islamophobia, and in hectoring Europeans to keep open the doors for mass migration, which he does. Now, last week, was it last week? Oh, it was last week. We talked about the Crusades. We talked about the book, God's Battalions. We talked about why the Crusades were justified, even though I hadn't finished the entire book. I've just about done it. But the key story was amazing, and I'm still recommending that book if you want to know as a primer. There's no such thing as Islamophobia. It doesn't exist. A phobia is an irrational fear. That's what it is. An irrational fear of something. there's nothing irrational about it. If you go and read God's Battalions, you'll understand that it's a completely justified fear and anxiety and concern, whatever word you want to use, about a culture that has systemically proven itself to be hostile to the places where it goes. I know that it is not all Muslims. I know that many Muslims argue against that. I'm not interested either way. As a locationist, this problem is bound to arise again and again and again, and it does when you move people into the same geographical space. And so there's no such thing as Islamophobia. It's nonsense. It doesn't exist. Comments, anybody? Anybody think it's a phobia?
It's an alien culture that is nothing to do with us. And you see, the thing is that this is the big problem. They've got all this. You've got all this waffle about you're this ist and that ist or whatever ist or racist or whatever. But that was a term that I think it was Trotsky that first said racist in the early 30s, because Russians were being moved into satellite states at an alarming rate to destroy the satellite states' culture. Now, it is cultural genocide as far as I'm concerned. Now, the people themselves are like, they're pawns. They've been enticed into this country. Why have they been enticed into this country? And really, we've got to look, why has every political party been, or government that's come to power, has been the most treasonous of the lot? And how have they got away with treason? How have they got away with it? This is what we've got to analyse, because they're working against us. You couldn't destroy a country from within better than what they've done. They've done a fantastic job of destroying this country. You couldn't have dreamed of better of that. So,
I think a great deal of it must be to do. I think a lot of it must be to do with the types of individuals that are groomed for political office, because they are.
Yeah,
they're selected early on in universities. They are preyed upon there. They are turned in some way. They are introduced to the dark side, but they are.
Yeah,
and
I have a lot to say about this. I want to hear some more of the meat of this.
Yeah. Let's keep going through that, because we're just in the run up to it, really. So he goes on. He says, next paragraph, with regards to Francis talking about Islamophobia, he says he is not alone. The rape gang scandal in Britain shows that UK officials, from the Prime Minister down to local council officials and police officers, repeatedly refused to come to the aid of working-class white British girls being drugged and gang-raped by Pakistanis. This is true. They did so out of fear of being racist, ta-da, and being thought racist. Yes, it's where this thinking comes from. This is the bit. They did so out of fealty to liberal ideology, one aspect of which is the belief that any culture other than one's own is right and good and must be kowtowed to. To do otherwise is bigotry. Now that rings a lot of bells. I know he's just spelling it out, but this is what we're told, isn't it? You're a bigot, right? You're a racist, right? This is a terrible thing. We've got to be nice to everybody. And you hear that comment, or at least I've seen a lot of clips. It may be not exclusively this, but, when we were talking the other week with Monica about the so-called empowerment of women, it's led to a huge, and I remember we were talking then that this is why so many women end up becoming liberals, or they do. I don't know if it's a causative reason, but they do. They end up becoming liberals and embrace this liberal ideology, and then they become sort of like, we can look after everybody in the world, and you who live it, you must be nice to everybody, right? Because if you're not, this means you're going against our ideology, and we're going to go nuts over it. And this is what this article in part is about. So welcome, bigots, one and all, if you're a bigot. That hurt, didn't it? Nope. Oh, yeah. I'm really, really suffering on that. So next one, he goes, we have been here before. In his extraordinary 2023 book, Wonder Confronts Certainty, Gary Saul Mawson, a leading scholar of Russian literature, writes of how Russian novelists, and this is the bit, that's what the picture's about on the show, right? That's why I picked some Russian novelists. writes of how Russian novelists and writers of the 19th and early 20th century dealt with the big questions that would haunt the 20th century and our own. In Mawson's telling, the conflict among writers of the period had mostly to do with reality versus ideology. That is to say, should we strive to understand life as it is or as it should be? This is a very useful sentence. Because I would suggest that the context for this show, and for most of the people listening to it, is that we are interested in trying to understand life as it is and are not interested in the ideologies of these utopians who are saying it should be like this. You agree? Have I got agreement? What do you think?
Well, the fact is that what we've got now are thick academics that live in a kind of theoretical world, and not a practical world, because none of them have had to do anything practical in their lives. Mm-hmm. And it's like you're saying, I mean, I look on communism as a mental illness. It is a mental illness. There's no ifs and buts about that. But and you look at you start a business now, and how complicated the tax system is. Why? Why should these things be complicated? They make finance complicated. Why? So they can hoodwink you. And this is the thing. Government and mafia, to me, government are far better than the mafia because they have got better PR, which is the best PR that
they've got psychological control of government.
Yeah. That's right.
They've got a psychological control that the mafia can't achieve except amongst its own subculture, which it achieves through violence, or at least that's the impression that we get. And it doesn't have to be literally fisticuffs and murder. It can be applied violence. But the government are absolute masters at that. It's that slow squeeze, because the bill and the demand through the door is the regulatory system on people. That's why they're subdued. That's why they're demoralized. I mean, butter. I'm going to Paul the housewife now. Have you seen the price of butter, Eric? Oh my God, yes. It's like £2.80. It was like £1.50. I don't know, about a year ago. It's nuts. I like butter. I have a whole a whole bar of butter every day. You can't have enough. It's ridiculous. And that's how you can see that no one's got any disposable income left. It's a ridiculous phrase. I mean, maybe there are a few, but the vast majority don't. They don't have any.
One that shook me was I actually buy straw. I haven't got a pet rabbit or anything like that. But actually, I put it on the soil and it stops slugs attacking your plants.
Right.
Because the bloody slugs made short work of my primroses, but they don't now because I put straw down. Now, the small bale of straw, which was a very small bale from Pet Shop, was 99p about 2 months ago. It's now £2.39. So it's gone from 99p to £2.39. That's a phenomenal price.
It is.
Phenomenal increase.
It is. Let me just read one little more bit because we're coming to the end of the first hour and we're going to play a song. I've got a nice song about vegetables coming up. Everybody will be giddy about this. I know you all like a good song about vegetables. I love them. Let's just read this last little bit. So I'm going to read that last paragraph again, very short. It says, in Mawson's telling, the conflict among writers of the period had mostly to do with reality versus ideology. That is to say, should we strive to understand life as it is or as it should be? Those Mawson calls the great realists, Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Chekhov, and others, the good guys, right, insisted on telling the truth no matter whose ideological convictions were offended. Their opponents, writers whose names have been all but forgotten in the West today, obviously he's forgotten them because he doesn't write any down here and I couldn't name any, believed that art and literature should be judged by ideological criteria. In the mid-19th century, there arose a class in Russia called the intelligence. That's the thing in the title here. Intelligent with an S at the end. They were known as the intelligence, the equivalent of our woke scholars, journalists, and their sympathizers throughout institutions. Education does not make one an intelligent. A shared dedication to progressive ideology does. Even if one does not agree with the intelligence, one keeps one's mouth shut. This'll ring bells. One keeps one's mouth shut to protect one's own career and reputation. As one Turgenev character says, today, even those who dislike progressive ideas must pretend to like them to gain admission to decent society. And I think you see the mind control in play. And they were dealing with this back in the mid-19th century, which is quite a thing. Nothing new under the sun. And he goes on to say, sounds familiar, doesn't it? Yes, it does. So I'm going to come back to this after the break. We're going to take a short break now, so I'll let that run around inside your brains. I hope you've got some and they're working. By the way, I've put the link to the article in the Rumble chat. So if you want to pick up the page as we're going through it, it might help. I know this is a bit sort of teacherly or whatever, but I think it helps with this stuff because it's useful to go back and see certain things. Right, let's have a song. We haven't had a song in ages. This is by Billy Cotton and his band. And all I can tell you is my dad hated Billy Cotton. Did you hate Billy Cotton? Eric? Did you hate? My dad hated Billy. He was the guy that used to come on and go, wakey. And I was going to play it, but I thought I'll play that. And I went and got a clip today and I looked at it and went, no, I can't. It's awful. I just couldn't stand it. But anyway, this is a fun little song. This is the marrow song for 3 minutes. It's all about marrows. It's a really good vegetable and it's silly and it's very English and it's got nothing to do with what we're talking about. So this is 3 minutes break. You can air your brain a bit. We'll be back after this. Great lyrics, by the way.
Down the road there lives a man I'd like you all to know. He grew a great big marrow for the local flower show. When the story got around, they came from far and wide. And when the people saw the marrow, everybody cried, oh, what a beauty! I've never seen one as big as that before. Oh, what a beauty! It must be 2 feet long or even more. It's such a lovely colour and nice and round and fat. I never thought a marrow could grow as big as that. Oh, what a beauty! I've never seen one as big as that before. Oh, 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 what a beauty! We've never seen one as big as that before. He was leaning on the garden gate the other day and beckoned to a lady who lives just across the way. He took her down the garden path and showed it her with pride. And when she saw the size of it, the little lady sighed.
Oh, what a beauty!
She'd never seen one as big as that before. Oh, what a beauty! It must be 2 feet long or even more. Such a lovely colour and nice and round and fat. I never thought a marrow could grow as big as that. Oh, what a beauty! I've never seen one as big as that before.
It's stupendous! It's colossal! It's gigantic! It's bigger than that!
Then the flower show was held and everybody went to see the great big marrow lying there inside the tent. Soon the judges came along to give the prizes out. They only took one look at it and then began to shout. Oh, what a beauty! We've never seen one as big as that before. Oh, what a beauty! It must be 2 feet long or even more. It's such a lovely colour and nice and round and fat. I never thought a marrow could grow as big as that. Oh, what a beauty! We've never seen one as big as that before. Oh, I've never seen one as big as that before.
Attention all listeners. Are you seeking uninterrupted access to WBN 324 Talk Radio despite incoming censorship hurdles? Well, it's a breeze. Just grab and download Opera Browser, then type in WBN324.zil. And stay tuned for unfiltered discussions around the clock. That's WBN324.zil.
The views, opinions and content of the show hosts and their guests appearing on the World Broadcasting Network are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of its owners, partners and other hosts or this network. Thank you for listening to WBN 324 Talk Radio.
Welcome back to Hour 2 of Paul English Live here on WBN 324. I hope you're all still reeling from that mighty song about marrows. That was... Hey?
Well, he used to be on a thing called The Gang Show. Have you heard of that? Ralph Reeder.
I do, yes.
Now, when I was very, very young, I remember it, and my dad couldn't stand it. And it was always groups of kids marching around the stage so that, you know, their mothers could say, oh, look, there's little Tommy walking across the stage. Give us a wave and all that crap, you see. Well, anyway, I've never forgotten it, and I don't know whether they've got a recording of it. And because we had a flickering black and white television, and we couldn't afford colour in those days. And... I think it was actually before cut. I don't know. I'm showing my age now. But anyway, they're all sort of singing along. Was it riding along on a crest of a wave? That was it. All, you know, all
I
showing
hate that
off
stuff. I hate it. I can't stand
I
that stuff. Ugh. I'm shivering thinking about it now.
They used to call it the gangbang show because there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. But anyway, on with the story. It is a family show. I should restrict it. But and what happened is the fire got out of control. It was on stage, and they had the firemen come on, squirting all the foam all over the fire, and they're still singing at the back. They're still carrying on as normal, as if nothing had happened. And it just hit my funny bone. I've never forgotten it. But no, it was a lot of people. I think it's Dick Emery came from the Gang Show, didn't they? And it was, as I say, Ralph Reeder. But
it's one of the best songs about marrows, though, that I've ever heard. I mean, I don't know how many songs there are about marrows, but if there are any, that's got to be amongst the top 10 marrow songs of all time. Maybe there's a whole album about vegetables. I mean, I'd probably go out and buy vegetables. You could even do a B-side, could be all about fruit. It's quite exciting, really, when you think about it.
The Beach Boys did one, didn't they, on vegetables?
Did they?
You very rarely hear it. Yeah, it was almost an instrumental. It's just something about I love my vegetables. I really love my vegetables. And I've only heard it once. I've never heard it another time.
You know the bowler-hatted farmer, Eric? Of course you do, because he's a regular guest on. Well, I think he should make that song his sort of anthem. Every time you bring him on, oh, what a beauty.
Yes.
I've never seen one like that before. I like that lady's voice in the middle.
Yes,
I think I'm gonna get that as a sort of what do you call it, a jingle or something, so I could just, it's very, and there were slight double entendres in there. There were some double entendres. Paul, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, as far as this being a family show, I think that ship sailed about 45 minutes ago.
Oh, I'm just pretending it's still a family show. Keep indulging me in my delusions, Paul, please.
Oh, good Lord, it's huge.
What about Harry Roy, my girlfriend's, should we say the slang term for a cat? Starting with P and ending in Y. And that came out in the 1930s. If Patrick wants to look at it, anybody looks it up on YouTube, it's My Girlfriend's Cat.
I was shocked when I saw it, to think that everybody was smutty and filthy minded in the 1930s. Completely destroyed my romantic view of a nice, prim, proper, decent, well-behaved English types. It just turned out it's just a pot of filth. The whole culture is disgusting. I know exactly what you're talking about, and we can't play it today. But I'll see what we can do. We'll have to go off. Maybe we'll have to write to the BBC and see if we can play it and whether we actually pass censorship laws, because it was a pretty outrageous sort of song.
But it's not rude. It's only rude if you think it's rude, because it's a slang
then it's
term.
rude, isn't it?
Yes.
That's like so. It's only if you think that. Well, I only think everything. Everything that's going on with me is about what I'm thinking. I can't help that.
Or the other one is She Must Have Lost It at the Astor. There's another one.
Steady.
She must have
Right,
lost it every
anyway,
actor.
swiftly, let's get back to vegetables and the story at hand,
Yes.
right? Because we're moving into the chunky bit. So we've just been discussing, and I'm going to finish off this great article by Rod Dreher from EuropeanConservative.com. And as I said, I put the link into the Rumble chat if anybody wants it. You'll have to probably scroll up a bit now because they're all going like Billy-O, and I'll try and have a look. But let's just carry on with this. I'll just sort of recap the last bit just before our marvellous vegetables song. He says, even if one does not agree with the intelligence, these progressives, these ideologues, one keeps one's mouth shut to protect one's own career and reputation. As one Turgenev character says, today, even those who dislike progressive ideas, that's you lot, by the way, must pretend to like them to gain admission to decent society. Of course, there isn't much decent society left, but that was the state in the mid-1800s. He goes on, he says, sounds familiar, doesn't it? We see in that line an explanation for why so many otherwise sensible people, even conservatives, keep their mouths shut. This is the issue at hand. Keep their mouths shut about the rape gangs, about mass migration, and so many other ills that mostly afflicted those outside decent society, like working class white English girls. They don't talk about it because it doesn't affect them, because they're in decent society, and us lot, scumbags, peasants, we're not. And therefore, we're cannon fodder for their ideology. Anyway, he goes on, he says, as time went on, the intelligence came to, this is really when it gets very tortuous, and it's kind of sort of delving into how their minds are dysfunctional, I would suggest, because their spirits are as well. The intelligence came to idealize the people, not based on who the Russian people actually were, but rather as a totem to help them deal with their own psychological feelings of guilt for their own privilege. Now, there's a big idea. Yeah? I'm going to read it again because I think this is the meat of it in a way. As time went on, the intelligence, that's these progressive idealists, these utopians, basically, you know, the bedrock of communists, came to idealize the people, the mighty working, all that kind of stuff, not based on who the Russian people actually were, but rather as a totem to help them, i.e. the intelligence, deal with their own psychological feelings of guilt for their own privilege. Citing the work of two lesser-known Russian writers, Mawson says that they exemplify the troubling consequences of basing politics on guilt, which may lead people to adopt whatever solution promises psychological relief, even if it does not help, or even positively harms the victims on whose behalf the guilt is felt. Is your brain spinning? Because it's a big chunk. That's why I put the article up, because you've got to sort of read this thing over and over again. I think there's something, it just feels right. There's something in this, that there is some kind of, because they've got guilt for all the bad things that we've done, someone's got to pay for it, and it's going to be the working class. It won't be them. But if they say it's all of us, they get to look good, in part. This is me extrapolating, and I'm bumbling a bit. They get to look good whilst sacrificing us on the altar of their ideology, saying, yeah, we deserve all this because we're really bad. We're really, really bad, you know. But they're not going to pay the price. We are. And this is the thing that, you know, the guy that told me about the banking, he said, we always pay for their mistakes. That's how the system works. They make mistakes. We pay for it. It's hypocrisy on an institutionalized level. And you can't confront them about this because they're so uncomfortable about it. They would rather kill you, and do. And quite happy to send you off to war just to get rid of the plebs, you see. It's an internal problem that has allowed the external disease to come in, seems to me.
Paul,
thoughts?
If there is just so many things wrong with that. I mean, if you said anything against it, you would immediately be labeled a racist and all kinds of, and all manner of despicable person. And it's a load of crap. It's the only thing I guess.
What, you think the idea that the intelligence are trying to handle and deal with their own guilt, that this idea is rubbish? Is that what you're saying? You don't think it holds water? I don't know what it is that you think.
It's just a load of crap. I don't think they have any guilt. You're talking about those who think they're in control, right? They don't have any guilt for anything they do.
No.
The only guilt that they're going to actually present would be the guilt that they're trying to talk the masses into accepting for themselves, because that's what they do.
Yeah, there's definitely something. I think you're right. I don't think they have guilt, but they've based politics on guilt. It's like part of it. I mean, I don't feel guilty for anything, but this thing comes up all the time, doesn't it, in conversation? People go, well, look at what you did when you went all around the world and killed everybody. Well, I didn't do it, but I go, have they got a point?
Right.
And there are aspects of the behaviour of the East India Company and the empire of the City of London that are not good. I don't condone that sort of stuff. They're not good. And, of course, the idea is that somehow Britain benefited as a whole from this is also a lie, because most of the people that were in it are the peasants described in Dickens' novels. That's who most of us would have been back then, in the treadmill, on the treadmill and all this kind of stuff. Let me carry on with the next paragraph, because it's something that needs to be thought about a bit. Obviously, I'm just trying to cover something. It's quite detailed, but I think I'm interested in this aspect of it. He goes on, he says, to help members of the British ruling class feel better about themselves, whether you go along with this or not, the whole of Britain had to be wrecked through mass migration and deliberately turning a blind eye to the evils done by non-white Britons. You see, there's something that's maintaining this, because it's been going on for decades. How is it maintained? Normal people go, this is wrong, but the people in power go, they just ignore that. They just carry on making it worse. He says, turning a blind eye to the evils done by non-white Britons. The same logic explains the rampage of gender ideology, which has resulted in the lifelong sexual mutilation of gender dysphoric British children, which is another sickness. As Mawson explains in chilling detail, the utopians of the Russian left, once they gained power in 1917 in the revolution, sacrificed the lives of tens of millions of innocent people to pay homage to ideological principle. Yet as Dostoevsky, and only Dostoevsky in Mawson's judgment, saw, the seeds of the 20th century's mass murders were already in plain sight in the writings of the 19th century progressives. Now, it could be that there's another explanation here as well, because there are two types of people that we're talking about with regards to Russia. But these sorts of behavioural patterns seem to be exemplified. You know what I'm saying? I'm being quite diplomatic as I'm talking about this. So most people will probably know, or at least should be familiar with the idea, whether they subscribe to it or not, as Solzhenitsyn laid out, that the Russian Revolution's not Russian. And it isn't. It wasn't the Russians killing one another. It was another force that got enabled within Russia that systematically tunneled it out and brought it to the most hellish situation. They really did. I mean, it's horrific. But we've got kind of an echo of it here. It's the same sort of unfolding of behavior patterns, and those that are in power that are supposed to look after the people. I know that sounds pathetic, and it is pathetic, but that is apparently what it says on the tin. They don't. They actually make everything worse for us. Do they not?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree there. But
crap. Sorry.
But really, what gets me is all the time you're getting negativity, and like attracts like. They want us to be depressed. They want us to be down.
Yeah.
And this is why I think our greatest weapon is laughter. We should laugh at them. I mean, throughout our youths, when we were young, it was nuclear war threat. Nuclear war, we'd be griddled alive. There's films, there's documentaries, all shock horror. Grim. Now what we got? Pestilence and plague. All get a squirt of Bill's toxic arm brew in you. All it is peddling fear porn over and over and over again. And let's face it, a fearful population is a controllable population. And this is why I think we've just got to adopt a mentality that looks at it as a pantomime and laughs at it all the time. Yeah, you want to go and invade Ukraine? Well, go on, Starmer. Piss off. Go there. Good luck to you. Russia, or you want to invade Russia? Yeah, go on, sod off. It's just fear. I mean, I'd hate to be of military age now, a teenager. It must be terrifying for poor kids. I mean, the threat of being sent to war. What a horrible thing all the time,
But I don't think anybody's going to go, Eric. I think there's something. I mean, whatever this mindset is that they have, it's actually this is the problem, because it's this mindset that can't seem to be killed off. I mean, I think it's got to be in some way, and then when we get distracted by a war, it's actually moving away from this psycho-spiritual disease that's right at the heart of things. There's something not right with these people. They don't subscribe to obedience to God. In very simple terms, it's simply that. And this sort of ego-driven thing that they have, and it's, all the old cliches are true. The road to hell is literally paved with good intentions, and it's a bloody road. And we've said before that the liberals, the left, the socialists, the commies have just got literally rivers of blood behind them, and it's all done in the name of creating utopia. If only you would tolerate all this stuff, and those of you that won't tolerate it, we're going to kill you. And they don't even hear that as an ironic or weird thing.
Yeah, but if I could just pick up on one thing, you said people won't go to war. Well, there's two examples of this. How this is one thing this country is very skilled at, and that is propaganda. We're really good at it. And the situation in 1939, this country was very anti-war, totally anti-war. And in the 1930s, even the British Legion, which wasn't royal, and it didn't become royal until 1971, sent a delegation to Germany to prevent another war, because of the horrors of the trench warfare of World War I have been over less than 20 years. So it's just a generation ago. Now, what happened? Within a matter of weeks, they turned public opinion round from anti-war to chomping at the bit for pro-war. Did that literally in a matter of weeks with Poland. Now, they'll do it again. They'll have a false flag. What was First World War? That was Germany marching into Belgium. Now, Second World War was Germany marching into Poland, which was going away from us, not giving this country any threat at all. And what is not said is that, and there's evidence of this, my father says this in his book, the suicide rate amongst teenagers and youngsters went through the roof. And there was lists of names in the newspapers almost every day of people of military age that have committed suicide. Very, very high rate. And I think it must have been similar in Germany as well. I don't know. But they can turn public opinion round on a sixpence. They can literally turn it around overnight. People are that dumb. That's stupid.
Well,
Look
I include myself.
The last 4 years.
I include myself in that dumbness. I'm serious. Just less dumb than I used to be. But I'm still dumb enough to not be able to affect the situation. I mean, that's really... It's trying to find out how and why they think. Not because I'm just curious about it, but to bring it to a halt. Or to get it away from us, to find some way of stopping it, because people go to war, nations go to war, because somebody thinks it's the thing to do, and they're able to transmit that thought to the cabinet, and all this force comes into play, and people feel compelled, and then as that wave goes down the command structure, thugs are quite happy to come and beat up their fellow countrymen, i.e. press gangs, to get them in the military. Because it's for the national good. There is no national good. What they mean is it's for the good of us running your nation. They're always separate from us, aren't they? They always have been. Yeah, they intend to maintain that. And you're not supposed to find that out, and they don't want that kind of stuff. Let me carry on with these things, because we've only got about 4 paragraphs to go. He says, what Britain has lived through, and what many European countries are living through as well, is the cost of the utopian ideals of their liberal elites, of both the left and the right. This is true. There is no right. The idea of there being a far right is just hilarious. I mean, it's non-existent. There's nothing of the sort. He goes on, after all, what was conservative German Chancellor Angela Merkel's infamous 2015 declaration, opening Europe's floodgates to migrants? Wir schaffen das. We can do it. is, if not a manifestation of liberal utopianism. In other words, this is a great challenge to let everybody in and mingle together, but we could do it. It's going to be great. It's just nuts. Britain today has a feckless Labour government, in part because the Conservatives in power, despite all their stated convictions, also lived by the same hollow beliefs. The raped working class girls of Britain are the price people pay for liberal ideology. Mawson writes that the great Russian realists refuted progressive theories, not by taking them on directly in their novels, but by showing what it means to live by them. Well, Britain now has its answer, and so does every European country cursed by migrant rapes and other crimes. The rape gang scandal makes it abundantly clear that liberalism, as it has been practiced for decades in the West, as distinct, for example, from its Hungarian version, is the suicide note of a civilization, which it is. Both the UK and the European Union are rapidly approaching a decision point. A cataclysmic reckoning will be a horrible thing to live through, but the only thing worse is no cataclysmic reckoning at all, just resignedly going gently into history's long and barbarous night, which is generally what it feels like it's happening. We're talking about demoralized, fat people who are not well dressed. These are all signs of it. It's like a disease everywhere. It's gradual and it's incremental, and there's a sort of mental and physical slovenliness building up all over the place. 2 paragraphs to go. He finishes, he says, "We saw what happened to Russia when those in positions of leadership refused to take the warnings of its Dostoevskys seriously. The same is true of us in our time. Indeed, it is happening right now. The West is burning, while the Starmers, the Scholzes, the Macrons, the von der Leyens, that's arseholer, fond of lying, that's how you pronounce her name, and even the Pope all fiddle, which they do." And he closes out with this. He says, "On Mount Athos, a priest told me that the monks there are so removed from the world that they were late to learn about the existence of the Second World War. I'm not sure if that is true, but experiencing how cut off they are, deliberately, from the outside world, even in the internet age, it is at least plausible. But the monks, in their medieval peninsular redoubt, have an excuse for not seeing what's happening in the world beyond their personal horizons. We do not." And this is true. We don't have an excuse, but we're not sort of reading the signs right, or as well as we could. Anyway, I know there's been a kind of chunky, heavy piece, and I'll put the link in again in Rumble, but I think it's worth a read and a reread, simply because, well, it pulls together a lot of threads. And I think there is something to do with them. We've said it here before, the people that are in charge are mentally ill. How do we get that to such a thing that we can get them sectioned? I basically think that utopians need to be sectioned because they don't understand reality, and they don't want to. And reality includes all these qualities that we're looking to have back in our life, like decency, and families, and these things, the things that make life worth living. We're only here for a short period of time, and they're doing their damnedest to ruin even that. The blink of an eye, as we would say. So, anyway,
set up our own separate government. Although I personally am against government, but the thing is, anybody that stands up against them will have to have top security around them, because they'll be taken out, as they always have been taken out. Because again, we're dealing with mafia. That's it. And possibly a politician that goes rogue, maybe. Mm-hmm. That's a possibility, that knows the ropes and knows how to get away with it. I don't know.
We're not, if I may, we're not dealing with the mafia, because the mafia respected family, they respected order, hierarchy, and a decent cannoli. These people are scum. The mafia is a step above these people. As horrible as that sounds, as weird as that sounds, the mafia had more order and more concern for... The mafia actually understood that you can't kill somebody and continue to collect protection money from them. You have to protect their life if you continue to want to harvest them. These guys... They're spraying chemtrails and putting chemicals in the food, the water, the air. They are killing us at every turn. These guys are simply psychopaths, narcissistic psychopaths. They're not the mafia. Sorry.
So we need some
Excellent
We
point.
need like a
Excellent
bug
point.
spray, anti-psychopath spray. Or how is the problem solved? You see, governments seem to be an unavoidable part of human nature. They seem to be. I'm not saying they have to be. They all start off with good intentions, at least according to their own mythology, and they all tend to go wrong pretty quickly because they become a nexus of power. Certain types of individuals, people that we are currently calling sociopaths and psychopaths, are naturally drawn to it because they perceive themselves to be the rightful rulers of everybody else. And there is definitely a type of person that thinks like that and comes from a long line of breeding with that kind of attitude. I mean, I mentioned this thing, what's her name? Elizabeth Manningham Buller, who used to head up MI6 or MI5, one of those. During these trainings that they were giving to agents in PowerGen in Birmingham in the 1980s, there's a whole series of blogs about this. Were absolutely fascinating. It was all under the aegis of British Royal Arch Freemasonry. And Royal Arch Freemasonry is a subset or a side set or whatever, who cares? It's just another club within a club or the Over Club. I couldn't care less. She said, we are the people that are born to rule and we're going to rule. And that attitude is very, very strong with them. And when they've got that belief and are projecting that all the time, it starts to happen. Now, in other words, your thoughts do manifest in reality out there. And when we look at beautiful things, like beautiful buildings, that's the result of obviously good quality thinking at the time and people willing to do it. Now we've got, I pick on the buildings because they're the most obvious symptom in a way, and people's dress. So do we just form new institutions? It's as if we have to form our own institutions, and then we're faced with the challenge, but there's no other way around this, if we think this is a good use of one's life, which I think it is, of how you deal with it being infiltrated, because it will be, and are you strong enough to smash people in the teeth when they start destroying what we're trying to build? Because that's really what's going on all the time, this fight.
When I first started studying architecture, the first things they said is that the way something is built works on your subconscious, and it creates a kind of atmosphere or a mood. And I'm going back quite a few years now, and that's quite true. You walk along one of these modern shopping precincts or anything like that, it's horrible. But you go to somewhere quaint with old Gothic buildings, beautiful jetties like York, the Shambles, and that. It does something to your subconscious. It's a feel-good situation. It makes you feel good, and this is what they're trying to snub out, because again, it's all designed to make you manic depressive. And I actually think that architecture has something to do with the amount of people on these antidepressants. I really do, because they're building depressing areas. You go to places like Harlow in Essex, it looks as if they had loads of cement they delivered and they didn't know what to do with it, so they built Harlow. Horrendous. Everything's concrete. Everywhere you look, it's concrete. Concrete's fine when used correctly, but it's cheap. And it's bland, it's grey, it's horrible. And this is the big problem. And I can guarantee, I mean, where you live, I bet you've got some really old style buildings, yet in the 60s, there's a concrete dump in the middle of them. They do this all the time. And the thing that they like doing now is keeping the facade of a building and then gutting the inside and turning it into offices and things like that. That is just, it's criminal. It really is. Absolute criminal.
I mean, I think at the root of it, we come down to, the old sort of conflict, which is no man can serve two masters. You cannot serve God and Mammon. And in the past, a greater percentage of people were serving God. And in the present, that's switched over to Mammon. In very simple terms, it's been morphing towards it for a long time. The commercial control of the planet is the thing that has moulded much of the way that we live. we're trapped by it. You have to pay the bills, all this kind of stuff. I mean, I think, dealing with what appear to be relatively small things, although council tax is not a small thing. This is like going from the big to the very, very small. But learning to defeat them at these levels and finding ways to defeat them or to stop these ways of encroaching upon us has got a great deal of merit in it, because it sets an example, maybe a tone for future things. The buildings that we talk about, and I'm just going back to buildings again, that we like, I work on the basis that the architects themselves were to some degree inspired by an understanding of life beyond their own life. Whereas the materialists, as it were, this whole science thing, this is all there is. It's miserable, and it's wrong, and it's incomplete, and it's wretchedly poverty-stricken. It's just plain wrong. When the Royal Society was formed in 1700 and odd, or whatever it is, when they decided we're going to have this Royal Society of Science, or whatever, I haven't got the date, there were about 50 people that signed up for it to get it rolling. And the day before they all signed up, every single one of them was an alchemist, as well as a scientist. That is, there was an aspect of their education, of their daily life, where they spent time studying metaphysics, the nature of existence, not just what it's made up of. And they decided that they would remove that from science curriculums, that everything had to be materialistic, had to be measured in terms of measuring instruments. And if you can't see it, it doesn't exist, and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And so one fell swoop, it was an attack on things like poetry and creative writing and thought and dreaming, all of those things that, they're to be dismissed. The world doesn't need all that stuff. It absolutely needs it. It absolutely needs it. It's completely vital to the idea of life being a buoyant. If you want to embrace it, how are you to bring beauty in the world if nobody's envisaging it? This is why we've just got all this miserably designed junk everywhere. It's awful.
It's set up to break the Christian spirit. And
you're right.
It's interesting that you mentioned Mount Athos. I had been invited to go to Mount Athos
right
a long while ago. When it kind of inspired me to learn about Eastern Christianity was I had gone to visit a friend of mine in the seminary in the Vatican, and he one day told me to go to the Oriental Institute, the Pontifical Oriental Institute, and there were people from Russia and from the Eastern Christian, Ukraine and other places, Greek. And they had a liturgy that looks a lot different than, it's different than the Roman Catholic, in the West here, the type of liturgy we have. And it's quite unique, quite more reverence for what was going on, at least compared to what it was like then to go to church, because our spirits kind of been kicked out of us in the West after World War II, and there is a collective guilt in the ruling class where you can see that they have to create a false narrative in order to cover up the crimes that they committed in bombing Germany.
Yep.
This plays a lot into it. And what you read about the Muslims, I don't fear any Muslims. It kind of reminds me, though, of Anthony Burgess's book, The Clockwork Orange, which got made into a movie by Stanley Kubrick, of all people. And that notion that you can correct the person's morality through scientific methods and not the church. It kind of makes light of the Church of England for good reason, I think, too. But it reminds me of that notion that, it's the same kind of thing. It's like a rape gang going around raping and pillaging and creating violence, and then they can't spiritually correct him. So they come up with a scientific method of just showing him just the worst violence in the world, and it's all done in the name of science to reverse engineer and make him a good person. The character of Alex in that novel.
Yes.
It just reminds me of that, and so I had an opportunity to go to Mount Athos. I never took it, but it was a business partner of my dad's. He was a part of the Red Lake tribe in Minnesota, and they were taking fish because we have a lot of carp here that was brought back in the day after the Civil War, they figured it would be a good idea to stock it up with carp, and now it's an invasive species and nobody eats it. It's just disgusting. So what they were doing is they're bringing it to Russia, flash freezing it and putting it on ships, bringing it to Russia. Well, they bring it to Russia, and the first thing that happens is the Russian mafia takes all of the fish. He steals it from them and feeds it to the people. And this was back in the early 2000s.
Yeah,
this was taking place. But I remember being invited to go to Mount Athos, and I researched it. And it's interesting because there are different monasteries on the peninsula, and each according to a different nationality. So there's the Greek, and then they have Serbian. And a friend of mine was actually friends with the Serbian patriarch. And he showed me the big cathedral in Belgrade that they were building at the time to Saint Sava that exists now. And there's a lot of rebuilding of churches in the former Soviet countries, as a matter of fact, in Russia, Serbia, and Ukraine. But the thing of it is, they want to divide Christians from each other and get us to see that Christianity is the enemy. And what's happening in Ukraine is a perfect example of that, because they should be getting along. These are two Christian nations, two Orthodox Christian nations, and yet they're at war with each other because they've been manipulated by an outside force. It's a very sad state of affairs that we're in, and I don't blame the Catholic Church like the author does for this sexual scandal of the pedophile priests allegedly.
Oh, I don't think he was blaming it. It was just citing it as an example. I put the link, by the way. It's worth reading it. But yeah,
I'd refer to there's a work that E. Michael Jones did about this, because he covered it quite extensively. And they had people from the Anti-Defamation League, these lawyers and people like the current governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. Yeah. And there was another DA in Pennsylvania, Lynn Abrams, where they have the power of the press, and they went after priests. This is 2002. Well, what was happening during 2002 was they were trying to get people to go to war with Afghanistan and Iraq. And the main opposition to that war was the Catholic Church, where people would go to church on Sunday and the priests would give a sermon against the wars. And it was a way to shame them and to make them fearful of speaking out publicly against this popular effort that they wanted to make it a popular effort to go to war. So they purposely accused hundreds, if not thousands, of priests throughout the country, and put, like, for instance, what Lynn Abrams was doing was she was accusing them, and they would print like 200 pictures of priests in Pennsylvania in the newspaper that were accused, but then there were no charges brought. They were just accused, and then it would go away, and there would be no apology for that, and then it becomes a popular perception. Well, the Catholic Church protects all these pedophile priests. What they were doing is the blackmail operations that they pull it's tremendous in getting these politicians to go in line with going to war. And what, for instance, the Epstein thing, that's a hot button thing with what Robert Maxwell and his daughter and Epstein and all these other characters, Les Wexner, are all involved in. And it's getting people through the sexual sins because they're more easily controlled that way. I mean, you can, he's cheating on his wife. That's kind of the way it used to be. And now it's gotten to the point where it's like you got these LGBT freaks controlling the narrative on the popular culture in the news and whatnot. So it has to get more extreme as time goes on. So they have to pull out things like that in order to get people to shut up. Because if you're gonna have a war, you can't have opposition to it. Just like in World War II, they had to shut down all the people who were speaking out against it, like Father Coughlin, who had millions of people listening to him, and then they had to create this licensing scheme through the FCC, create an organization in order to license people's right to broadcast whatever, on the radio waves, and use that as an excuse to shut them down. and then they finance other clerics like Fulton Sheen and Jack Warner from Warner Brothers, to get the Christians to get along to go and fight another crusade of a sort, because they can't do it without Christians, because Christians make up the majority of the population still. It's dwindling, and they want it to dwindle because it's the main opposition to what's going on there.
Yes.
It's just like you in London, you got Londoners that belong to a certain race that can go fly to Tel Aviv, engage in a gay orgy, and then go out and shoot Palestinian children, and then fly back on the weekend back to London, and it's all normal. I mean, this is the level of insanity that we have going on. But I just wanted to make that point, that it's not good. And for some reason, Clockwork Orange came to mind because of the rape gang notion. I mean, that's what's happened as a consequence of these wars. And I'm reading right now Pope Francis's autobiography called Hope that just came out last month, and it's interesting. You can kind of see where he's coming from a little bit more. He was originally from Piedmont, Italy. His grandparents were, and they were anti-war. They were against World War I. So they moved to Argentina to get away from that, because they saw so many people getting sucked into these wars for nothing, for these rich elites that didn't care anything about them and was just sending them off to be cannon fodder. It's the same kind of situation that's happening now. So there's more to the story of what's going on. And as far as Pope Francis, he's one of the few leaders in Europe that have any clout that actually opposes what's going on in the hot zones of Ukraine and Gaza right now. Like he calls a parish in Gaza almost every day now, and he's been doing it since October 7th. So that he's not on the side of the people creating these wars. If anything,
I mean, he might not be, but his comments about allowing people to come here is just completely not on.
Well, I know. But that's the consequence of these wars too. You have to admit that if it weren't for these wars, they wouldn't have a reason to come. But they've always. I mean, you could, well, maybe, but you could say that they've always had a reason to come. But they just couldn't get here before, so they're being enabled to come. Yeah,
and
I think that's true. But I think a lot of the troublemaking that goes on in those places happens so that it agitates and it's the same group of people that the race of people that we're talking about.
Yeah.
That go in there.
I know.
And they're the ones that benefit from the wars. Let's put it that way, because it's just like in the Iraq War. What benefit did it do to anybody in Europe or in America? Nothing. But it benefited that group in West Asia that have taken over and are trying to create a greater state than what they already have.
Yes.
So that's
it's every time we acquiesce or do a thing, it's as if we don't want to be tough. And I don't want to be, the idea of people having to suffer because of all this, it just repulses us all around. But the ones that are going to do the most suffering are us. And I think we are. Everything is being destroyed. I just come back to this thing about locationism and the fact that you can't mix races together on the same bit of real estate. Now, it seems as though this is now going to be impossible to correct and reverse. No, there's no will to do it, or there appears not to be. I've got plenty of will to do it, but I don't think I'd last 10 minutes. I'd get shot. I mean, I think the thing is that no one man can change this. I mean, they never have, really. I mean, the idea of sort of fascist dictatorships, I was thinking, they don't really exist because they've got to have a body of men around them to carry out the orders. And you find historically that within that body of men that are very near power, they all want it too. And at some point, it all goes pear-shaped and they undermine the leader. These sorts of things happen. So how to affect these situations is tricky. Because, I mean, what we're faced with, therefore, is just compromise on everything, no satisfying life, and the inability for us as a race to thrive. And, of course, what's happened, yet again, we are paying not just for the mistakes, but for the intentional actions taken historically by our governments for hundreds of years. But, normal people in America and Europe never wanted war. I'm not aware of it. I don't remember my dad saying, it was great that World War II started. I just couldn't wait.
Well,
Nobody
and then
said that.
Pearl Harbor happened, like Eric was talking about.
Yeah.
They come up with something, another
Yeah.
9/11.
Yeah.
That's traditionally, that's what they do. That's the conservative, the Republican way of doing things, is create a big distraction for everybody to get motivated around to go and fight a war, because you have a new enemy that pops up out of nowhere. You know, like Al Qaeda or ISIS, you know, that happened back 2011, whenever that happened, because it was probably before that with 9/11 and all that. They tried to make it out that Al Qaeda, which is the CIA front, trying to get people whipped up into hysteria, and we got to go and kill these people because they want to kill us for our freedom. It's like, oh, what freedom? What freedom are you talking about? You know, and how envious and jealous are they that they would want to do that? And why are they in such a poor condition? What made them that way? Nobody wants to deal with those issues. It's like the whole migration thing from Africa. It's like, why would they want to send their best people, you know, these doctors and lawyers, and, you know, that's an excuse to get people to come in. Well, we need workers, we need laborers, because no one's having children anymore because of the Malthusian policies that were put in place by these Western governments. Well, it's like, if you had followed the Christian way of doing things, you wouldn't have those Malthusian policies, for one, and you'd be having a good society. And that's the issue. Is like, why are we killing ourselves and then giving an excuse for people to come in and take over? It doesn't make any sense.
I know, but it's not we, is it? I know what you're saying, but it's not. If you go and ask normal people,
I mean, it's the elite that's doing it.
Of course. And they're doing it to us. And it's, so, I mean, you know, this thing about whenever these politicians say we, I never accept that I'm included. I don't want to be included. You don't get to speak for me. I'm not part of your we. Go away. But it's, I mean, otherwise we're just going to acquiesce to everything. It's this, I mean, I thought the article's right in the sense that this is a slow dribbling burnout of everything until we find a way to correct it. And of course the way does exist. And it is Christianity in the best sense of the word, but it's not the organized religion versions, which get corrupted as well. That's my take on it. How you actually structure these things is another challenge. But I think that this is why I think that race is so important, because we're like different operating systems. Kept apart, it functions well. Each internal network amongst racial members of it functions as well as it's going to ever function, and has got the best chance of producing happiness for people in that race. But when you put them in different locations, it's like a virus. Naturally, each operating system becomes a virus to the other one because they're not aligned. They're not right or wrong. They're just different. And it's like, you know, I've said before, like playing music in different keys. It's just discordant. It wears. Everybody can tolerate it for a while, and then bang, something happens. And of course, our brains have been massaged day and night by the media, which is in the hands of the agitators. We know all this. It's just looking at ways to actually sort of bring it to a halt.
Yeah, and I totally see where you're coming from. And in my mind, a race coincides with one's faith, one's understanding of the world and the outlook in general, because, you know, your family you grow up in determines a lot about your character and how you're going to behave.
Yes, it does. Yeah, it does.
Morals, and that, to me, that's the ultimate race is your faith, your being. You know, like why are you here? That those important questions that don't get answered in the schools. Like, these schools are set up, these government schools. You're supposed to teach morality. That's the main reason that the children go to school, is so that they can be moral people. So that if you have a constitution that you follow of law and order, that you're able to uphold that. But the moment that you start teaching them perversion and making little Johnny think he's little Susie, you're going to confuse them, and they're going to grow up and be adults real quick. It happens really quick. And then they're going to be the next generation of politicians, and they're going to be all messed up and not able to keep whatever form of government that we have going.
Yeah.
And the traditions that our families held to for centuries will disappear. like
Well,
that
they are
because of
disappearing.
the lack of the morality.
They are disappearing. And I guess we're not facing a problem that previous generations in the past haven't faced. They've faced hellish things. I suppose most of
like
us never
Dostoevsky.
expected to face something as bad as
You were
this.
talking about Dostoevsky. He started out as kind of like a communist, revolutionary type person. Then he had a dramatic change in his life when he was put in prison and going to be executed. And at the last minute, in front of the firing squad, they pardoned him.
Hmm.
And then he became a Christian. And he really advocated that toward the end of his life, that's the only salvation out of the government problem that we have and the obvious chaos that was going on at the time in his century, which wasn't that long ago when you think about it. And it affected what we're dealing with right now with Russia. It hasn't changed much, has it?
No, it hasn't.
And it shows you that there is that we have to be able to get along in the world with people from other nations, and that there should be a mutual respect between nations that goes on, and that's not to have a false, the international socialism, right, where every religion is equal and every race is equal. It's bunk. It gives you a false hope and a sense of security that isn't there, because not every race and faith that people believe in is equal, and some are way worse than others. Some are way, like Christianity, in my mind, that's the pinnacle of institutional
Well,
power.
for us it is. Historically and
it is.
racially, it is. But it
reality,
might not be very good for Aborigines. I don't mind. I'm not, I think it's the imposition of it is where it all goes wrong, because it's run contrary to what the instruction set is.
Yeah.
It's designed for one people.
It's like
whether
the
other people
missionaries here in America.
Yeah.
They had a tremendous respect, the early missionaries, for the people that lived here. They would come here and codify their language, write down their legends and the myths and that sort of thing of what they believed in. And they logged that down and got to know those people. And as a consequence, those people benefited from that experience.
Well, we say they did. And from
They did.
From
I'm
my
going to
perspective,
say they did, because I wouldn't be here right now if it weren't for that. Because you go back far enough, and you've got people who came here long ago that intermingled and created a civilization that functions. Whether it's on a good trajectory now, that's the consequence of our parents' generations.
Well, I don't know. I think I just always think whenever we try and see things from our perspective about what's good, I know what works for us. I know we're people that make tools. We've made a lot of tools. It's because of the tools that we've made that the world's changed so much, particularly over the last 500 years. It's just been astonishing, all these tools and things that we create. But if you're a red Indian living on some reservation these days, demoralized, I don't know quite what they're like. I know they've got casinos and things. But what happened to them is now what's happening to us, in a kind of different way, a different phase, but it's like a removal from the very things that connect you to your way of life. I accept that maybe these things are just unavoidable. History is just littered with it all over the place. No one can keep their business to themselves, and maybe we've just got this urge. There had to be the Roman Empire, because if there hadn't been, there would have been a Turkish one. It's like we were saying last week. If they hadn't repelled the Islam in Spain and elsewhere, basically you would have been speaking Arabic right now. There wouldn't have been a sort of European growth out of England in the 15 and 1600s. It wouldn't have happened, because we'd have been completely colonized we'd have been Islamized by then. I heard someone talking about Islam who was saying, what have we contributed to the world? It's not that much. I'm not trying to pick on them. It's just a different culture. But maybe they don't have to contribute stuff to the world. Why would I even measure it? If they were at peace. But of course, the history of that one is that it seems in great part to be based on agitation. Now, I'm quite prepared to have someone sort of verbally take me apart on that, but that's my current impression of it. So it's when they meet, and is it always the case that civilizations are going to clash and going to meet one another, and generally, It's all going to get cocked up. Anyway, where are we now? Oh, look, we're coming to the end of the show. I'm going to play out with a song. So we'll be back again here on WBN. Look at that, just really running off at the mouth. Only 50 seconds left. We'll be back again here on WBN same time next week, which is 4 p.m. US Eastern. We're going to carry on a bit longer. If you want to tune in, go to paulenglishlive.com and click the Rumble link. I'm going to play you out with Cherry Pink and Apple Blossom White by the Fabulous Thunderbirds, because that's the sort of guy that I am. It's only 2 minutes long. We'll see you next week. And as I said, you want to carry on listening, hop on over and join us in Rumble. We'll be back after this. Short and very sweet. Fabulous Thunderbirds, Cherry Blossom Pink, Apple Blossom White. There's a different rendition of it for you if you've not heard that before. I used to play that in a band, actually. How about that? I used to be able to play that a long time ago.
Quite terrifying.
Well, I was quite terrifying. Oh, that song was terrifying.
No, that song was quite terrifying because when it held that note...
Yes, you thought he was going to die.
My second hand on my clock stopped. It didn't move. I'm going, wait a minute, what happened here?
I know. When I used to play that, I had to really make sure that I had an absolute lungful of air because it's quite long. And we'd sometimes ham it up, and I'd get my wristwatch out whilst I was playing and looking at my watch, and others were just waiting just until you go red in the face and fall over. Yeah, it's a bit silly. It's a happy little tune, though. A happy little tune, and they were one of my favourite bands. I think I've seen that band play live more than any other band, so they used to come over here quite a few times in the 80s, mid-80s. I was in London at the time. I've seen them about 5 or 6 times, and that was when they had Jimmy Vaughan on guitar, who I rate as one of the top 5 guitarists ever. I absolutely love Jimmy Vaughan's guitar playing, and that's when I was really into all that kind of stuff. So a lot of good fun back then. A lot of good fun. More fun than what we've been talking about. Miserable bastards that we are, isn't it? Not really. No, it's just, I mean, it's serious. It is difficult. And sometimes my brain goes into sort of, what's the word? Tharn. I just get locked in on it. But it's almost like, you can talk yourself into sort of like a mental standstill. It's like, what do we do? You know,
well,
and I suppose
that is ideological subversion, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
in many ways. But
it is.
Back to architecture. Most architects will sort of worship Le Corbusier, or Corbusier, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
The Swiss architect, who was, shall we say, the father or mother or whatever way of these horrible tower blocks, who was possibly one of the worst architects you could ever wish to come across, because he was set to design a whole new city in South America that was hacked out of the jungle. and he thought everybody would travel in cars, so he had no pavements for anybody to walk on. And it did have, I don't know if it still has, the highest pedestrian accident rate in the world. I mean, the man was bonkers. Absolutely bonkers.
Where was this? Paraguay?
I'm not sure where it was in South America, but if you look up Le Corbusier, it will actually tell you. You'll probably hit the art. Someone in chat might find it, or you might find it.
Because I have a friend in Uruguay, and he showed me the flats that they have there, and they're just as ugly as they are in other places I've seen.
Well, he did want a flat in. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk across you there, but he did a flat in south of France, and it's a sort of blot on the landscape. And the architects go, "Oh, it's fantastic! It's a statement." That's what all they say. It's a statement. Well, so is a pile of dog poo.
Yeah, was he around the Bauhaus area at that time?
Yeah, he died in 1965. He was born in the so he would have been a Bauhaus, which was it less is more and all that old tut, which it's ugly. Bauhaus, vile.
I did a book where I worked as an assistant photographer. We went and did photographs of the historic lake homes in Lake Minnetonka, Minnesota, just outside of the Twin Cities near Minneapolis. Kind of a real posh area, people from General Mills and that sort. And so I got to learn a little bit about these architects. Like, you've heard of Philip Johnson? It was a modernist architect. Okay, he did a lot of the skyscrapers here. How about Frank Gehry?
Yes, I heard of him.
Okay, so there was one house we went to. The guy, he was retired. He used to be a CEO of General Electric. And he had a Philip Johnson house. And it was really interesting. I mean, it looked like a brick prison on the outside. But then you go on the inside and there's like a glass atrium. Very beautiful type of thing inside. But it's all modernist and not my taste. But in his backyard, he had a guest house by Frank Gehry, and it was just the ugliest looking thing I've ever seen in my life. It looked like a trash can, or a trash bag, with trash coming out at the top. And nobody lived in it because the way they designed it, it acquired black mold all throughout it because of the cheap materials that were used to make it. And this is the guy that was notorious for taking pieces of cardboard, gluing them together, and then carving out furniture out of that to make disposable furniture. It's just like,
Well, they're on a different planet. They're in a different world. Yeah. And I was always moaned at because I like Art Nouveau. And they said, oh, it's just because you've got used to something that you accept it. But even Tower Bridge was looked on as ugly when it was first built. I disagree. It wasn't looked on as ugly as when first built. Something's either beautiful or it's ugly. And if it's bloody ugly, it's ugly. It doesn't matter how long it's there. And I mean, when you look at the 9/11, the building that came down there, that was an ugly bloody building. Very ugly building. There's no architecture in it. I don't know. I actually found that it's the King's New Codes. And I think that the RRBA, or the architects, I don't know what the equivalent is in America, was infiltrated by the commies in the 1950s. And we got the results of it now. It's all, I mean, Le Corbusier, he designed in a communist way, even though there's no real evidence that he was a member of the Communist Party or supported communism. But a lot of architects were rampant communists. People don't realise that. So that's
especially like the modernist type architecture. And it was kind of weird. You know who Frank Lloyd Wright was?
Frank Lloyd Wright, yeah, I know him. Yeah.
He had kind of a weird cult going on here in Wisconsin down south. And at one point, he had it was one of Stalin's wives had moved to Wisconsin, and her daughter were part of his cult down near Madison somewhere. And it's just like, you're right. The architects are part of these movements and the intellectuals in a society.
I mean, this when we boil it down, it's obviously been the unpicking. The root of Western civilization is Christianity, no matter what people may think about it today. It just is by historical fact, because it's not anything else. And so there's always been problems with it, but they're far, far less than the problem that we're faced with. And of course, everything in the so-called progressive modern world has been to undermine and destroy it. And it's happened because certain people live amongst us that are the complete opposite of everything that moral, ethical, and spiritual code represents.
They have too much money for the labor that they put out, and then they get like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's the usury class, the people, the parasite class that benefit from it and don't have to earn it. They don't understand what hard work is. So when it comes time to build a building, they're just like, oh, just here's some money.
Yeah.
Get it made, make it functional. That's all we need. They don't think about the other details because they don't,
because it's not part of them.
No, they don't.
I mean, here we are talking about. We're talking. I mean, it seems to me that an appreciation of and a bringing of beauty into the world is a key part of our physiological, spiritual, and mental makeup. We actually need it. It's not a luxury. It's absolutely vital for making sense of the world, because it's the language through which you get to, in your quiet moments, and you get more of them the longer you live, or you can have more of them unless you sort of decide to be busy into oblivion until you drop dead. You're going to get to consider the bigger questions about life, which seems to me really to be a great part of what, if it's not the part. I was reading something the other day just about everything and as one's years go by, I sound like an old fart now, but I guess it's just unavoidable. You realize how fast everything has gone. I wouldn't have been convinced of that when I was a teenager. Everything was very, very slow. It wasn't fast enough, right? Going to school and all those sorts of things. But it goes really quick, and it is the blink of an eye in the great sort of scheme of things. And yet we're here trying to pick stuff up and make a good show of it whilst we're here and be creditable. And it's something about working on ourselves, and we are interfered with. That's the bit. Now, is that by design? Are we supposed to be just interfered with? Is it supposed to be permanently frustrating and irritating and not what you can see? Because I don't see how it can be, because there have been periods. Maybe I was just really happiest when I was less informed about how horrible everything is. I don't know about, I remember with fondness being broke as a teenager, but very happy, being very lively. And having every day was just full of laughter and joy. It's full of scathing humour and, teasing one another and all that kind of stuff and a few little fracas. But overall, it was just absolutely brilliant. And I guess it's because you're thinking, I've got my whole life in front of me. It's going to turn out great. And for some people, it does turn out whatever you think great is. But then you hit a point where the acquisition of stuff ain't going to do it for you. Because it never did anyway.
No, and you don't appreciate it until you don't have it. It's like that's why poor people can have a sense of happiness greater than a person who lives in luxury their whole life.
Yes,
doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you do then appreciate those good things in life. And
well, wasn't that? Have you seen that clip of Nixon? There was a clip I saw of Richard Nixon. Did I play? I don't know if I played it, but I saw this clip of Nixon. Of course, Nixon's interesting. We ought to do a show on Nixon because he's completely framed. I mean, it's just all coming in. It's total setup. Yeah. And, Bob Woodward's not even a journalist. He's just a CIA operative, the spiv. I mean, it's just a joke, these whole things. But completely, if you'd have asked me in 1976 as a 16-year-old, yeah, of course, that Nixon, amazing. Because I didn't know any better. But Nixon had the highest approval ratings of just about any president ever. And there was an interview with him.
It the silent majority.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. And I saw this is before it all gone fully pear-shaped. He was talking about, it's this point you've just been making in a way, Patrick, where he was talking about the rich and the wealthy retirees in Florida. He said, you don't want to be like that in this interview. He said, have you been down there? He's talking to the guy. It's just a casual sort of off-the-cuff conversation over a cup of coffee or whatever. He said, if you go down there, he said, you'll see that, this is Richard Nixon talking. He said, you'll see these people, they're playing cards all day. He said, they don't know what to do with themselves. He said, they've got no worries at all. They just play cards. They retire. And he said, and it's the end of them. He said there's nothing to get out, but this is my words, there's nothing to get out of bed for. So I think in a way, although we don't
he was
like
in California driving hot rods with Khrushchev in his retirement. That's what Nixon was doing.
So he did.
Yeah.
Well, but it's almost as if you do need a problem. And if you ain't got one, some of us will just have a knack for making them turn up in our lives so that you've got a hurdle to overcome to create some focus in your day. Because although it sounds appealing to be sitting around maybe playing cards forever, actually, to me now, it's a terrifying thought. I'd go nuts. I couldn't do that. And I don't know about you. Do you ever get panicky about thinking about what you're going to do with your week? I mean, it sounds ridiculous. It's not as if I'm short of things to do. But sometimes I think, I've been doing these things over and over again for a long time, and I like doing it. Is this going to last, you know? Am I supposed to become a mountaineer? Well, not at my age. I don't really want to. I don't like mountains anyway. But is it this yearning for always got to have novelty and something else and what you're kind of running away from? So
you have to appreciate each day, and it could be your last. You have to look at it that way, and then you're a lot happier as a consequence because you realize you don't take anything for granted after a certain point.
I think the older you get, the easier it is to actually think like that, Patrick.
Yeah,
it is. When you're 19, you are literally bulletproof. You can just. There's nothing. You are basically as close to Superman as a bloke from 19 to 25 as you're ever going to get. Then when you get to about 26, you realise it wasn't actually that close. But it's something like that. It's something like that.
That's the thing. A lot of children are detached from the elderly, their elders.
Yeah.
They're just put into their peer group their whole life through the schooling. They never get to associate outside of that peer group. So it all becomes a big popularity contest and who's got the most stuff. And they never get a chance to talk to the older generations because they're just not in that. They were not given the opportunity to do it if they just go through the government type, program that most people go through, or the military or whatever it is. But when you start dealing with people who are older than you and have a more experience, that can reassure you, hey, you don't need to, you make these mistakes that I made. Here's what I did, and tell the story about it. And it's just fascinating. And that's why we need more people just disassociating from that system.
Yeah.
Homeschooling is a good thing to do. And just get your children and raise them yourself. Don't worry about the socialization. They don't need that. It doesn't make them a moral person. And you have a better watch on your child and what they do, and you're better able to discipline them than some, teacher who has 100 children under their control. But really, it's just a madhouse. They're not really being taught anything other than
no, they're not. It is a madhouse. But that was the great fun of it. That was the great fun of it, at school. I loved it. I thought it was. I loved my school days. I really did. People, school's awful and boring. They all want to leave, and I thought, this is a hoot. It's fantastic, and yeah. But of course, I was really there for the ice creams and the chat at lunchtime. That was the best thing, and making friends. But in terms of the sort of the organisation of the school day, it wasn't thrilling. I never liked homework, and anyway, this is all really rather boring. I'm sure, imagine it's probably everybody's experience to some degree with all of that. Young boys just need to be let loose amongst trees until they're about 10 or 11. You don't need anything else. That's what we lived for. And we did the most. I mean, if my sons had done some of the things that I did in terms of physical risk, I'm glad I don't know. We used to climb on the outside of railway bridges over trains and things whilst they were coming by. I mean, it's just mad when I think about it. Don't you go playing down on the railway line? Well, where else am I going to play? And swinging from trees and stuff and things like this. It was great.
You go through an inner city.
But you just deal with it, don't you? When you
go detector.
Yeah, it's great.
Just think of it now. They've got cops in the schools, and you got to worry about violence.
It's so much fun burning down railway carriages. Whoops! Oh no, I never said that. There are all sorts of things that happened when I was young that were very, very naughty, and that were great. Not really evil naughty, but just a bit naughty, and stuff like that. So we just had a lot of cow fields where I were. I had more fun there, particularly when we used to take. May I mention this, but we used to take golf clubs out there and hit the cowpats and play cowpat golf. It was just amazing. If you hit one of those things right, you can get all your mates get covered instantaneously in fresh cow. So everybody was running around with a golf club trying to find a cowpat to fire it at everybody else. I came back. What are you? Oh my God, my mum. What are you covered in? Oh, we're just having a bit of fun. It was great. That's all you need to do. Yeah, sorry, Eric.
Something I never did. Something I never did, but a mate of mine apparently did. Put 2 pennies on a rail.
Yes.
When a train was coming along,
yes.
and when the train left, the pennies were welded together. I never did, but apparently that's so. But
you didn't do that? Oh, we did that.
Because
we also used to put. You remember Matchbox cars? Those little Matchbox cars that were, I don't know, 2 or 3. We used to get really flat ones of those. It was so to reduce their drag coefficient when they were pushed. Of course, they didn't go again, but they were very flat, and we were always kind of impressed by that. Very impressed. Well, we had to go down there because it's where all the blackberry bushes were. And I just remember as a kid picking blackberries. It was so exciting because I knew my mum was going to bake these amazing blackberry and apple pie. This would be in the summer, sort of like 1968, 69. Why am I saying all this stuff? But it was just fantastic. We'd all go down there, loads of us, and I just, on the fresh cream, and oh God, I want it now. You know, when it comes out of the oven and it's still warm. That's all that counts. I think in the end, they're going to say, what was the best bit about life? And I'm going to say, pie, probably. Pies.
There's a certain smell, wasn't there? There's a beautiful smell of a pie that your mum made.
Oh, yeah.
That, I don't know. I haven't smelt it since. It's sad. It really is. But, that's life. Yeah.
It is, really. But, I think... I like that article. I'll put the link up. If you want it, Patrick, I'll give it to you. I think it's good. It's stimulating. There's something... I don't know whether... There's this thing about knowing more and more stuff. It does lead to becoming more and more miserable. I mean, there's a direct correlation. The more you dig into how bad it's all been, and yet I think we're obviously driven to do that. And you want to. But it sort of creates a gloomy view. Maybe you can never go back. And I'm probably even looking back on my youth with completely rose-tinted spectacles. I remember being bored out of my brains during summer school holidays when they were 6 weeks long and everything. And, you read a lot of books, and I didn't want to read, and there's no one to play football with, all that kind of stuff. So I've got a rosy view of it. But as you learn all this stuff, and we've been given this great opportunity over the last sort of 20, 25 years to do such a thing, it's a marvellous journey. But I'm left at the moment recently, a recurring thought is, do I need to know any more? No, not really. I mean, I'm not trying to be cocky or arrogant. There's lots of things I don't know, but the broad principle of what's going on is there. The thing is, what would be the best actions, the best behaviour to enter into to correct it? And what do we want to see? And I think, we do touch on the right things. In pragmatic terms, and it's useful to talk about these things because the layman can understand it, and I'm a layman and I want to remain one, is that the banks have got to be transformed. That's a nice word. But they have to be if we want to have any chance of being able to reinstitute a world in which the laws of God apply, because that's really what we're talking about. And I know people find it awkward. Even I have done up to a point. But I can't see any other way of phrasing it. It's either one direction or another. It's either earthly man-made power and control. Hello, that's what we're living in right now. Or it's everybody obeying, getting humble and going, hey, you know what? We're all going to be dead in 100 years' time. Why don't we behave well? Because we are. Everybody that's alive right now won't be alive at some point. It's a very weird thought. Or I find it a bit strange and striking because, you live a huge chunk of your life like you are, your mental attitude is, I'm going to live forever. I've got a career. I'm going to do all this kind of stuff. But in the end, I don't know whether it actually amounts to too much. Am I being completely nihilistic and miserable? I don't know. Tell me to shut up if you think it's rubbish.
But us two, I mean, you, Paul, and myself, we grew up in an era where the country was run by World War II veterans. People that
this is true.
Well, that generation are dead. They're gone. And what's taken over from it is a generation who are the children of the hippie generation. And the hippie generation, which was CIA, and we got the results of it. I mean, look at Starmer. His parents were of the hippie generation. There's something weird about them because that was the time when they started injecting children in the late 60s. Luckily, we were just before that, so we missed it. But I remember queuing up at school. I was about 11 years of age. They used the same needle on all the kids. Next, and that was it. You got a squirt of Christ knows what in you. But I haven't had any injections since I was about 11. But when you look at the loonies that are in power now, they've all most of them have come from that hippie. Their parents were the hippie generation.
But Eric,
Something
what's it
went
going to be
wrong.
like in
Something
20
went
years' time then? We're going to have
Well,
I tell you what, it's unavoidable becoming an old fart. I never thought I'd become one, but I have. And
but you look at
excuse me.
Rachel from accounts. She's the chancellor, and I
Yep.
thought she is Rachel from accounts.
Mhm.
She's as thick, excuse my language, as thick as shit. And David Lammy, thick as shit. I mean,
But they're dropped in
fancy
there, aren't
going-
they? We know that there is a management team that selects the actors to play the roles. And they've been selected probably for their rank stupidity and the fact that they are an insult to the rest of the population, who they then lord it over and think that they actually know something. The system obviously does not put the best people into the positions of power. It's never done that.
Oh no, never will do. It's a pantomime, because what it is, if it wasn't for usury, we wouldn't need government. We need government's job is to take people's minds away from why they're being robbed. That's all it is. That's all the government is there for. Because really, the country is run by civil servants, not run by governments at all. And it's dictated to by the usury scammers. That's basically it. And if anybody in politics dares to breathe a word about usury, they end up in a wooden overcoat. It's as simple as that. And I think Mr. H got into power in 1933 by a fluke. I think it was a fluke. He wasn't meant to get into power. But I think that in the future, you never know, someone might get into... What happens in history is the unexpected happens. And I've got a feeling the unexpected will happen and someone will get to power in a fluke. So who knows what's around the corner? But it can't go on like this. People are people are...
Well, I don't
waking
think
up.
they intend
Yes.
for it to go on like this, do they, Eric? They intend
No.
for it to get worse or something. I mean, the Trump thing's weird. None of the things that everybody believes are going to happen are going to come true. It just, dear me. If we can't muller the bank, we're not going to be able to muller anything. And of course, I was thinking, when you actually work it out, you think, what are the real pragmatic chances of doing it, and how could it be achieved? The problem is that the incumbents have got so much power. It seems to me, I don't want to talk myself into a sort of state of mental apathy, although it's easy to do it. It's like a rabbit in the headlights. You go, but they've acquired so much power over such a long period of time. Their behaviour is oriented to retaining it and maintaining it at any cost. We're quite nice people, really, I think. We don't want to kill, hurt or harm anyone. We just like to peacefully cooperate with people and have a good, solid, healthy life with our children and raise families and have all that kind of stuff. And yet their power is based on denying that to us for no good reason other than it's what keeps them in power. Maybe it's always been like this. Maybe this is the great conundrum. Maybe we're not in a nice place. Maybe this really is purgatory. Doesn't that thought sometimes occur to you? It slowly reveals itself to you the more you look at it. I'm not negative all the time. I mean, I think there is grounds for sort of optimism going forward. And even if there aren't, I just create some. I just go, right, I'm going to be optimistic. But you've got no reason to be optimistic, correct? I haven't got any reason at all, but I'm going to be that way. And you can kind of you can make things happen around you, can't you? And I delight really in just small little exchanges with people that I don't know when I'm walking around. It's just absolutely, I love it. I absolutely love just connecting up with people I don't know and having a polite conversation on the street corner. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Okay, see you. And I always walk and say, I'll never see you again, And they always start laughing. Probably won't, We'll never meet again. What? No, ever. It's just a complete freak one-off. It's very funny. I quite like it.
Precisely. But when you think about it, our enemy holds all the ace cards where it comes to propaganda. They're genius at it because they employ the best liars. So that's the thing. And this is why I think the only way of getting power back is to go for their seats of power. Now, you look at the BBC. Who looks at the BBC nowadays? Once upon a time, they had 100% viewing figures. Now, who reads a newspaper? I don't. I've noticed very few people reading a newspaper. You get on any, you look at the buses and things like that. There's no one reading a newspaper. No, nobody at all. You go into
but they're not very good at newspapers, are they anymore? Oh, apart from the Fockham Hall Times, that's an outstanding journal. I understand. That's amazing.
Oh, well, that's right. Yes, advertising the Fockham Hall Wonder Pencil. A joy for everybody.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. You use it to, if you're constipated, you can work it out with a pencil. These sort of things. Sorry, it's a terrible joke, that one is. But, but the real fact of the matter is, again, I think something unexpected will happen. It's bound to happen. I really do. It might be for the good. We always think it's for the bad, but it might be for the good. And the reason why we think it's the bad is because we've been programmed to look on the pessimistic side all the time.
Well, it would be nice to have a few people in power that had brains. What do you think about this in terms of real-world things happening recently? This little furore with the Nigel Farage of the Garage, his party, over the last week, really illustrates so many points, doesn't it? That, I mean, I know Farage has made some kind of presence known in America, because he rocks up to Trump's thing and people think, and he's got a certain charm about him, but basically he's a destroyer. He's not a serious guy. Yeah. He's not serious.
Well, if he had a brain, he'd be dangerous, wouldn't he? I mean, let's face it.
Oh, I think he's quite smart. I think he knows what he's doing. It's just that what he's doing is. So he's very proud of having destroyed the BNP. That's what he says, because it was a racist organisation. It needed to go. So that got destroyed. Now he's in the process of destroying what appears to be his own party. I mean, is he basically an outlier? Has just been sent out there to basically corral people together in a cul-de-sac and then destroy it so it can never challenge the Conservative Party? I don't even know why I'm talking about this, but I don't expect anything from him, except I suppose I paid attention, Eric, because Rupert Lowe, the guy that's got it in the neck, is one of the few people I've heard communicate in the last few years who actually sounds like a man. Does that make sense at all? He's actually said sensible things. He says things that are closer to where we want things to be. We will get... In other words, he appears to be, from his language... Who is he, Paul? He was a guy that's high up in the Reform Party. So the Reform Party is this... I suppose it's the third biggest party now in the UK. Farage runs it. And Rupert Lowe is a long-standing politician, a successful businessman, I understand. But he communicates well. He communicates like old-type politicians did, steady and clear and in a kind of calm but clear way. He's good. I just warmed to his communication style. I quite liked it. This doesn't probably mean anything, but I thought, well, you appear to be at least someone that we wouldn't be embarrassed about to communicate on behalf of the nation, whereas it's just embarrassing with the rest of them. They're just so atrociously, they're like a comedy act, and it's done to actually humiliate us and make us look stupid, which we are. Therefore we are made to look stupid because of the stupid people in charge. Lowe doesn't come across like that, and so what's occurred is, as I understand it, this is the drama, the political pantomime act of the day, is that Lowe's power, as it were, or his charisma, or his presence, or his clarity, whatever you want to call it, within the Reform Party was making, I'm reading between the lines here, but there have been a lot of reports to this effect, was making Nigel Farage uncomfortable. I'm the dazzling star of the party. I'm the one that's going to have all this. So some kind of weird charges have been concocted that he's been, I don't know, abusing female staff in certain offices, and he's been kicked out of the party, or he's had the whip removed, which sounds quite pleasant, really. You don't want to be whipped, but whatever. This is a bad thing, right? And yet most of the people in this office have come out in Lowe's defence and said this stuff is basically all made up. And the charges were not about Rupert Lowe, because there were some charges. They're about some other idiot in the office who was, I don't know, tampering with women. And this is typical sort of, political fare, isn't it?
We see the sexual morality being used as a political weapon.
Yeah, but he appears to be clean, and I think Farage is not going to do it. He won't do it. I've even thought, because I'm interested to know what people think, there's a branch of the Reform Party here in my town somewhere, and I think I might have mentioned a couple of months ago I bumped into someone I'd not seen for a little while who joined it, and because he was just concerned. It doesn't mean that he necessarily broadly is going to agree with it, but it was interesting that he thought something needs to be done. Now, this is a good sign. Even if going and joining the Reform Party is not that thing, at least actions were being taken, and I won't mind knowing what they all think. But Rupert Lowe impresses me considerably in comparison to Farage. It just does. Farage is obviously very media savvy and media friendly, but yet again, this is the guy that had the plane accident. And I heard someone saying that they thought he'd never been the same guy since, because he nearly got killed in this thing. And one of the theories is it was a warning shot across his bows that was meant to do him in, and it didn't. But he's got the message or something. Yeah.
Can you hear me, Paul?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. When did that plane incident happen?
About 2010, wasn't it, Eric? About 12, 15 years ago, something like that. Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember it, yes. And he was very close to death.
That's about the time I started picking up on him. After that, there was a time, I think it was Sandy Hook. It might have been after Sandy Hook when he appeared on Alex Jones's show. And I think that was one of my first introductions to him.
He's skilled at telling people what they want to hear, but then going back on it afterwards. Blair was.
Right.
Skilled at telling people what they want to hear.
You meet him at a pub type. He's a real pub crawler type personality.
Who? Farage.
Farage, yeah.
And he comes out.
I think he's quite fun, actually. I think he's quite fun, and I think he's got a good turn of phrase, and he is, and he does tell people what they want to hear. Eric, you're right. Yeah.
But he says this is the change we need. How many times do you hear this from political parties, even in the 1930s when they first got sound on film? Oh, this is the change we need. It's always the change. Change here, change there, when in reality, there's no change whatsoever.
Well, there's some website out there where you can pay people to say whatever you want them to say. And I know Nigel Farage is part of that. Like we could pool our money together and get him to do an advert for the Paul English show with the right amount of money.
Yeah, we could.
That'd be kind of fun, actually.
We could. Well, I think the thing with it, is I don't know about you guys. I don't know how you think about your shows, Eric, but I keep thinking, there's so much fear porn out there. Fear porn reporting, so many podcasts about it. And it's just a melee of stuff. And there's nothing, it's as if everybody needs to calm down and have a cup of tea. And then we might be able to hear a clear idea. And that's really what I heard with Rupert Lowe's communication. I'm not saying he's the savior or anything. Please don't think I'm backing the guy. I'm just saying in comparison to everybody else, his demeanor, his calmness, and his clarity in the way that he communicated things is helpful. When you hear these other people talk or try to, it's not helpful. There's nothing reassuring about them. They don't look as though they could withstand a force, a 5 mile an hour wind.
The most popular podcast format is? It's true crime. Like, most people are just fascinated by criminal behavior, and I think that's what everybody else is trying to be popular and play to that and just be like an outrage. Oh, this is an outrage. I go from one to the other to get people's attention. But someone like what you're describing is someone who's not like that and who just calmly examines the facts.
Well, I was just reminded of an older type of political communication approach, which I prefer. I just thought it's got a better chance of some sanity breaking out in a sentence every now and again. Most of it is just now such polished spin and performance. Forget it. It's a waste of time. They never talk about the issues, and they never talk about shutting down the bank. And they're never going to.
Have you heard of our politician in Kentucky, Thomas Massey?
Yes, I have. Is he now getting it in the neck?
He's getting it in the neck. Yeah, Trump came out and is going to primary him out of the office because he's he's one of the few that's telling the truth, isn't he? Well, okay, yeah. He had an interview with Tucker Carlson back in July, that broadcast.
I remember
where
that.
He was telling about how every congressman in our Congress, whether it's the Senate or the House of Representatives, has an APAC, I call it IPAC, which is the American Israel Political Action Committee.
Mm-hmm.
They have a APAC advisor, babysitter, he called him, assigned to them. And he's the only one that refused to have one.
That's right.
And
they've all got a babysitter.
Yeah. So that they vote on behalf of the Israelis in every vote that comes up. They're there to whip them into shape if they don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Blackmail agents, essentially. But after that interview came out with Tucker Carlson, his wife unfortunately passed away, and a lot of people suspect that there was foul play, even though he claims there wasn't. But
no,
he's the only one that doesn't take money from them. And it's just interesting that we've got this. Suppose that he stole this phrase, "America First." That was Charles Lindbergh. That was an actual party that was going to win the presidency, and it was the third party, the only third party that had stood a chance against what we have now with Democrats and Republicans. Back then, it was the Republicans and Democrats, and then America First. But that went away with Pearl Harbor. That was such an event that all of a sudden we go from peace talk. We'll never send your boys to war. To we're going to war against them. We're gonna slap the dirty little Jap and bomb them to kingdom come. And
I'm not playing that record again. Well, I might do, but not today. Yeah.
Well, that's the attitude. You see how bloodthirsty they become at it, and it becomes normal and accepted. Whereas before that, it's all politically correct. There are brothers. We're all one. Brother love.
Well, I think
thing. We're all brothers.
I know. You see, it's very powerful, the centralized political game, in terms of drawing our attention. Look, it's drawn mine. I'm talking to you about Rupert Lowe as an established, central government figure, or would like to be.
Me talking about George Galloway.
Yeah, I just can't stop, and all these guys that are in these things. But I'm trying to remind myself, even now as I'm talking, that I do think that the local community effort is the only way to go for us. And it's got to be, we've got I don't know if I was talking to you about it, Eric, but we've got a freebie newspaper around here, and I've just been researching it. It gets 47,000 copies are printed once a month. It's very nicely done, and it's full of all the normal sorts of cheesy type, soft local community stories that you would expect. Lots of adverts from funeral directors, people that relay your roof or your drive, all that kind of stuff. People making a living doing that kind of stuff. And it goes all over parts of West Sussex here. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, should we build a radio station for it? In other words, the things we're talking about here are kind of a subset of a subset in a way. And it's fine. And people here and everybody that's listening, and shout out to all of you in Rumble and on YouTube and on Radio Soapbox and elsewhere. It's great, and we're going to keep on doing this as we bumble around and hit high points and sometimes meander a bit. This is all part of it. But I thought, if there's a way to create something softer that would rope in a bigger audience, that might be worthwhile. And there are things out there that are driving people crazy on a huge scale. Council tax is one. It's mad. And then all of this basic thrust with life over here, which is no matter how much money people are making, it's just taken off them. They don't have a disposable income like they can't even think like that. No one's even thinking about that. I suppose there's some people still able to afford these things called holidays and get very upset when they can't have them. I've no idea why, but apparently it's very important to some people. But everybody knows that everybody else is being squeezed. And it seems to me that therefore, should it not make the ground ripe, in a way, for local coalitions or things to come together? And like I've mentioned here before, we've got 15,000 parishes. There's 12,000 village halls and parish halls in the UK. And they could be used to create some kind of a network. And so I was just looking at this. I thought, well, if I could build a station for them and we stick it in the newspaper, that's 47,000 copies every month. And then they've got all these writers that are writing on things like local musicians. There's a good historian actually here locally. I'm going to try and get on the show because he's written a book about Hilaire Belloc, because Belloc used to live around here. And this local historian, in fact, I was out with some people the other day. He's called Christopher Hare, Hare. And he writes a column in this paper, and I thought, cool. In fact, he did a really interesting article about defence placements built here to defend against Napoleon in 1802. They were very concerned at this time, but Napoleon was going to come across or dig a tunnel or whatever. They were expecting an invasion at some point over here. So the resources are there. I would imagine that you've got a kind of a mirror of that in regional papers all over. And then I'm sat here stroking my chin, pondering as you do, thinking, is this just an awful lot of work that's not going to go anywhere? But it feels as though it could be good. Although, if you're doing a lot of local radio programming, I guess it's a lot of local radio news. I mean, I wouldn't mind net curtain news. I think it'd be quite funny. Mrs. Jones of 56 Belvedere Avenue has just got some new curtains. I mean, I would actually probably listen to that purely as a bit of diversion away from international
Mrs. Jones
stuff.
Has a roof repair she needs done. If anyone has the ability to repair roofs, here's Mrs. Jones' contact in.
Yeah, contact us and we'll give you Mrs. Jones' details to protect her.
Do you remember Stars on Sunday? So do you remember Stars on Sunday?
Oh, I'm just shuddering a bit there,
Jess
Eric.
Yates.
I do. I do.
Yes, and and we have a lovely letter in here, card from Mrs. Smith. This is to her beautiful neighbour opposite, and she says, "I've got a bigger and better washing machine than you could ever wish to afford." That sort of stuff.
Yeah. But I mean, it could be. I was looking at the whole paper and I thought, I bet there are. Like, I bumped into a guy in a charity shop here. And they have a record section with selling albums. Everybody remembers LPs, 45s and 33 and a thirds. And these were all these 33 and thirds. And there were about 4 or 5 of us around there one Saturday afternoon. I was looking for something else, and people just got talking. Oh, I like all the old records and all that kind of stuff. It was great. So a guy comes in, a bit culturally all over the shop because he had dreadlocks, but he was one of us. But he was a nice guy. When he started talking, he was great. Really good sort of heart about things. I wanted to actually take this sort of stud out of his nose immediately. I wanted to just remove it, but I had to sort of put all this aside. And he got round to talking. He's completely obsessed with vinyl. You'd probably get on well with him, Patrick. Okay, so he's obsessed with it. And he was telling me that he'd bought 15,000 albums last year. He said, I've got a bit out of hand. I mean, he can't listen to them all. He's buying them and reselling them. But he said, I'm about to open a record shop. Yeah, so he's got this colossal vinyl. So I'm thinking, right, there's a guy that could run a late night music show. I just looked at him and that it would happen, right? And there's so many people in the local areas that if you tapped in and just gave them something. So I was looking for actual radio stations around here. There's 1 or 2 that have got broadcasting licenses. You look at what they're offering, it's just piffle. I mean, it's just modern pop music. Yeah. No one can listen to that. It's just rubbish. It's complete junk.
It's all advertising. It's just the same advertising over and over again, too.
Yeah. And it's boring, and they're just playing all this modern music, and it's junk. I'm old. Being old is being really cool because it's not cool to listen to this stuff that's young. It's really naff. It's total rubbish, and it's not even the witterings of a middle-aged fart. It just literally is no damn good. And when you see how they make it, there's no wonder it's no damn good, and all that kind of stuff. So I just thought there might be something in it. Maybe I'm trying to talk myself into doing something. But I don't know what the business plan would be. I could just see it sort of creating an awful lot of work. But if there was a model to do that, the idea was this is what you do. You do this. This is the workflow you build up. Because, realistically, anybody out there listening, it costs peanuts to run these things. I mean, you just create an app. Does. It's peanuts. You can get a server for like 20 quid a month and you can reach 12,000 people if you sort it out. They can all listen at the same time. I dream of that. You think, well, where are those people? Maybe they're just clustered around local communities. Anyway.
You know what I want, Paul, though? I want a 1,000,000-watt broadcasting station right now.
Oh, you and your 1,000,000 watts, Patrick.
Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, it would. Well, how much do you need? Why don't you just do a GoFundMe and we'll all chip in and you can get it and you can have the Wisconsin cheese radio station. That'd be fantastic. And I don't mind. Just get it. You could probably do it over there. They wouldn't let us do it over here. We can't do anything like that.
All you have to do is modulate a harp installation.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, just leg it up there.
Right there.
Here's an advertisement for you, Eric.
Okay,
buy a Hoover vacuum cleaner or washing machine at your Northeastern Co-op, and you get a chance to win dinner for two in London in a London restaurant with Jimmy Savile, including free travel, overnight accommodation, and $50 spending money.
Yeah, count me in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
actually, there's something in that because a night out dinner with Keir Starmer, that'd be a good prize, wouldn't it? First prize, yes, a night out eating fish and chips in the fish and chip shop of your choice in London with Keir Starmer and Rachel from accounts. Yeah. First prize is the best prize ever. Oh, boy. Yeah.
Can you imagine being trapped in a lift with them? I mean, you'd end up, you'd be suicidal by the end of it, wouldn't you? I mean, they must have those zero personality.
He's such a lying turd, isn't he, really? Yeah. He really is. He's a terrible individual. He really is absolutely awful.
Well, actually, there'll probably be a lot of people going for a dinner with Keir Starmer at a fish and chip shop, especially if that particular fish and chip shop had a tremendously large fry fat vat.
They would. They would go for that.
Battered Starmer. But have you seen the British Democrats? That's a party on the block now. They're gaining support locally quite a lot in Cambridgeshire and that.
Is that Jim Luthwaite?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ex-BMP, I think. But yes, it's quite interesting because I got a leaflet through that door the other day. I'd never heard of him before the other day, and that was it. But he's been around a long time, apparently. Do you know of him? Have you spoken to him at all?
I've seen quite a few of his presentations, his video presentations on YouTube over the years. He's very active and works hard, and there are others around him, aren't there?
Yeah.
You know, I suppose if we maybe I should try and get him on. If we spoke to Nick Griffin, he would. From what I understand, the last communications I heard with regards to politics is that there's literally no political solution. And I tend to that view as well, very much. I wouldn't view it that it would be the ultimate winning play. But is it possible that the development of a political party in terms of its membership base, even though it couldn't get direct power at Westminster, would be enough to actually unsettle power on a local level? It's local power that's needed. And let's face it, the people that work on councils are just, they behave badly, not because they're bad people, but because they need to get paid at the end of the month. This is this whole thing with the people end up doing bad things to other people because they've got to get paid. They're frightened of losing their jobs. And everybody
That's
thinks
what Yuri Bezmenov said.
Yeah. So I understand it. Yeah. He did. I mean, isn't that the sort of communication you would have with someone from the council? Look, I understand why you're behaving like a complete shit towards me, because if you don't, you'll probably lose your job and you won't get paid, and then you'll probably lose your house or something. So it must be not good for you. How do we? Can we work as a team?
You need to find a good lawyer, and a good lawyer is a poor lawyer. So it's kind of tough.
Yeah.
You would also need to have a couple of Panzer tanks around you.
A couple of pansies, did you say? What did you say? A couple of pansies?
We could have a couple of pansies, yeah. I don't know. That might frighten them off. You never know.
I'm not allowed to say that.
A couple of SAS.
Yeah.
You know, you would have to have a solid wall around you because the Secret Service would take you out. That you wouldn't be able to. You wouldn't last long because
really
they are there not for us. They're there to keep the usury scammers in power. That's what they're there for.
Yeah, well, that's where we need a strong church, but you got a lot of work ahead.
We do. I think we do need a strong church in the best sense of that word. The problem with that word currently is that when you say it to people, it just triggers all sorts of understandably
Propaganda.
negative and disinterested they just go, what?
There's a reason for that, because they're the ones that can oppose the politicians.
I know. But
draw
all
the
that
attention
connection's
of
been
people,
lost. And of
mass
course,
people.
the feeble-mindedness of those that are in charge of... I mean, wasn't there something going around about shutting down the Church of England? They're now beginning to say it directly in some sort of political communication about a month back. Just what's the point of it and all this kind of stuff? Of course, this has been the whole goal all along the lines. And I think it's understandable why people are disinterested in protecting it. Because it's been tunneled out and worn down. Yeah,
Well,
there's
it's
all
the
these
same in
fantastic
Ukraine.
buildings and parish
They
halls.
shut
Why
down
don't we
the
form,
churches there.
I've said that the congregation need to do a reverse buyout. Of course, most of the listeners here, and including me, are not in a congregation. We don't attend churches for reasons that most of what they talk about is off-putting. Certainly that's the perception of it. They have all these wet Nelly things that take place in there, like the Alpha course, which is just complete crap. And it's just not robust enough. The whole thing's soft and useless and is part of the problem. It's literally become a wolf in sheep's clothing. And whether these things are true or not, that's the perception. The perception is important.
I totally sympathize with you, because you're talking about a different church than what I'm talking about in a way too, because the Church of England is not the same as what I belong to. The Roman Catholic Church is different. You don't have women bishops. You don't have homosexual unions and all this kind of stuff.
Well, they're all a mess in my view, Patrick. I mean, I'm not going to say that one's worse than the other. They're all a mess. And they're a mess.
I know. And the thing of politics, though, is you go for the lesser of two evils, because you don't have a real choice in the matter. Most of the time, we're pretty impotent when it comes to democracy being in our favor. It doesn't suit us. But yeah, but I totally see the point in the lesser of two evils, because you do have to choose, and it's sometimes better and buys you more time. And as a tactic, when you're in war, because it's a spiritual war, you have to buy time sometimes in order to move out of the danger zone, and that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah. What about
You think the
Godfrey
pub,
Bloom's
Eric?
idea?
Do you think the pub congregation?
Oh, no, I don't. Godfrey
Yeah.
Bloom was saying that you can open up a pub, so
Yeah.
you can open a shed in your garden, which is just like a pub, and people
That's
bring their own drinks in.
Catacomb.
So you
Yeah.
actually buy the
Catacomb
drinks.
pub.
Yeah, something like that. And quite honestly, it's the atmosphere is what is necessary to bring back that sort of. We can have a chat to people and talk to people. End of loneliness. People become, more very friendly, and you can always get around the licensing laws. There's ways and means of getting around the licensing laws with ease.
Well, I think public houses, they started by people just opening their houses to the public and saying, "Come in and have a beer." So,
yeah,
that could be. It's the buildings are there. We're just not using them right, and I'm still trying to think about. It's like the best use of time, and maybe where I'm kind of impatient as well. It's unlikely to be resolved in our lifetimes, it seems to me, although miracles can happen. You can have things turn around in a couple of years if we hit the right note, whatever that might be. They're very careful to get people pissed off, but not so pissed off that they actually do something about it. And that's it. That's part of that sort of boiling the frog slowly. We got a minute left to say things, a minute and a half, and then there's some music. We've got about 3 minutes left in the show. We're going to go out hard break at 11 o'clock this evening, which is 7 p.m. US Eastern Time. So any closing comments, gentlemen? Anything you'd like to say? Been quite serious tonight, I think, but I've enjoyed it.
I like
whatever happens. Sorry.
Oh, you go ahead. Go ahead.
No, just whatever happens, have a bloody good laugh. That's all I'm going to say.
We'll have to get that
think we
Fockham
need-
Festival going and have a few beers. But then I don't drink beer. I've stopped. I don't drink anything now.
Right.
I don't know what's that. It's just tea.
No, I'm teetotal as well.
Tea and eating a lemon. God, what's happened to me? It's a bloody joke. And what do you do all day? I drink tea and I eat lemons. Oh, tough guy. Yeah, Patrick, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, we'll make. I like the idea of the radio. That's still a good idea. Open up communications.
If we can find a model for it that works, then we could show this is what you do, and then all these little parishes or communities could start to roll it out. It's just got to be satisfying and feed energy back to the people that do it, and a little money. It just does. I think for a sort of self-respect or motivation, no one's going to make millions out of this. It's just to actually cover costs and keep ticking over. So we'll have a look at that one. Paul, any last words from wherever you are with less ice than you had last week?
Don't forget to order your official Fuck'em Hall Wonder Pencil. They're amazing fun at parties and be the envy of the neighborhood and all of your friends.
Well, I think next week we'll go into pencils in a big way and we can work it out, can't we, as the actress said to the bishop.
Yes.
I think, and we'll talk about that. We also should talk about Skype. I meant to talk about it today, but we'll cover it very briefly next week. Skype's closing down on May the 5th. I'm hacked off about that. 20-odd years of contacts and all this kind of stuff. Good old Microsoft just shitting on the world as they always do. Anyway, at least it's a leopard that never changes its spots. Thank you to the team here tonight, Eric, and to Patrick and Paul. Hope you've enjoyed the show. We'll be back again the same time next week. Thanks. Shout out to everybody who's made blistering comments in Rumble. We've not included too many tonight, but thank you. And we'll see you same time next week. So go good, God bless, and all that kind of stuff. We'll see you next Thursday. Bye for now.